At the banquet, right in front of all the VIPs, that dude straight up said the lady knows exactly what she did wrong. But she still had the nerve to show up at this party, so he doesn't know how much more she plans to embarrass him. Trips Rita Ortus was really hoping that, as his fiancée, she had at least an ounce of decency left. So now our boy can't hide how totally let down he is by Lady Fionia Felicia. No other woman on earth would stoop to such nasty and low-down tricks, the Crown Prince declared, totally pissed. It's no wonder everyone says this lady is definitely a real piece of work. A perfect talent to match her rotten personality, the Crown Prince of the Ortus Empire told the guests without holding back. Right at that super dramatic moment, a blonde lady shyly ran out of the crowd and timidly called out to His Highness. Under the weight of crushing fear, Lily Albayolos, shaking, said that this lady is totally innocent. The prince, with a sad smile, asked the Viscount's daughter why she was so kind. All right, Lily can chill now. As long as he's around, she doesn't have to sweat that nasty woman anymore. Meanwhile, the main character was watching the whole thing go down from the crowd. The current Countess, Seraphi Validus, is actually someone who got isekai'd into this crazy romance novel. She was seriously ticked off that the sweet, innocent prince wasn't anything like he was described in the original story. If you only knew how hard Seraphi worked to make sure the Crown Prince didn't expose Fionia at the banquet. Now all the ladies are gonna trash her, and her carefully planned engagement is totally wrecked. To get to this point, our girl jumped into the original story to live the good life. But that's an understatement. Seraphi went through hell trying to change her fate in this world. Being a minor character who wanted to make it on her own, the main character didn't have a choice. Seraphi's friend, Luni Ferenz, came over to offer her a drink while she was trying to figure out how everything went sideways. No, it's too early to jump to conclusions, Seraphi thought. Maybe this whole thing will make both Fionia and Lily ditch the Crown Prince. Those two amazing ladies are way too good for that bonehead. While Seraphi was fuming, Lady Felicia surprisingly agreed with the prince, since she really had been acting like a real piece of work. But honestly, she was already super aware of all her shortcomings. Now Fionia totally got what His Highness was putting down, laying it all out in public like that. Acknowledging her imperfections, the lady wished to be relieved of the heavy burden of being the Crown Prince's fiancée in this empire. Truth is, Trips was scared of the Duke's family and avoided straight-up calling off the engagement, just trying to turn the crowd against her. In the end, things played out pretty much like they did in the novel. Except, this time, Fionia herself, by her own choice, decided to dump the Crown Prince. Trips, Rita Ortus, gave a sickly sweet smile and briefly touched Lady Albayolos' cheek, saying that the one who had been making her life miserable was finally gone. But the young lady's reaction wasn't quite what he expected, leaving the prince completely stunned. Suddenly, right in front of everyone, the noble Lily slapped the Crown Prince across the face. And then, her voice cracking, she called him a real piece of work. Trips definitely wasn't expecting such a fiery response, and a dangerous glint sparked in his eyes. The crowd froze too, stunned by this unprecedented scene. Even the main character was shocked. She wasn't expecting things to escalate this quickly. Meanwhile, Lady Albayolos rushed over to Fionia, who was kneeling, and began sincerely apologizing for everything that had happened. Lily was in a real panic, seeing how shaken Lady Felicia was, completely unaware that she was the one who surprised her. Just imagine, the upstanding Lily Albayolos, a symbol of virtue, just smacked the Crown Prince. Fionia couldn't even picture it, so with a relieved smile, she admitted that she even felt a sense of, well, relief. Even though the prince was once the guy Lady Felicia loved with all her heart, now she felt absolutely nothing for him. Gently touching a strand of the girl's hair, the Duke's daughter asked Lily if she remembered the offer she'd made. "Will you come away with me?" It sounded so simple and decisive. Lily thought deeply about the Duke's daughter's words, weighing all the pros and cons, and then she smiled warmly at her and, full of resolve, agreed to follow her. The main character totally wasn't expecting things to turn out this way. Suddenly, both noblewomen turned to Lady Validus, as if on cue, and began thanking her profusely. After all, it was thanks to her that the heroines had found the courage to act according to their hearts. At that moment, Luni Ferenz shrieked with genuine delight that Sira was totally her friend after all. Both noblewomen ran to the main character and gave her a big, tight hug. Serafina tried to force a smile, because a strong female friendship is, without a doubt, a really great thing. For the audience's sake, I should reveal that Saint Lily actually wields incredibly powerful white magic. And Theonia, on the other hand, is a natural-born genius when it comes to dark magic. Originally, these two were supposed to unleash a brutal war that would shake the Empire's future, but for some reason, now they're friends. The main character desperately tried to convince herself that she didn't care what happened to this world. That's why she just used whatever she could get her hands on. Serafina flinched as soon as a tall, dark-haired man silently appeared next to her and stared intently at her. In the end, she brought this on herself. The main character thought with annoyance, feeling everything falling apart. Duke Felicia's son, Orcus Felicia, asked in a serious tone what the heck was going on here, expecting an explanation. Now the main character understood she was totally screwed. The only question burning in my brain was, why? He was here too. To get the full picture of what happened, let's rewind a whole year, back to the distant past. It had only been a week since our main character woke up in the body of young Serafina Validus, but she just couldn't figure out how. After cracking her head on a bottle, she just blacked out, and then this. Was this really her destiny? So messed up and out of nowhere? But now the young woman knew for sure. This world from the novel wasn't just a dream, it was the real deal. Kind of like the Middle Ages, where the dresses aren't exactly modern, and science is a weird mix of tech and magic. The main character was trying to figure out what the heck she was supposed to do now. Luckily, reading and speaking weren't a problem, and the fact that this was her favorite novel was kind of a lucky break. But how much does that really change things when her character didn't even get a couple of lines in the original story? Right about now, Serafi's old man is probably gambling away the family fortune, like always. And her mom, poor woman, is in treatment. Serafi's body is covered in scars from all the long, brutal abuse she's been through. If this keeps up, who knows what'll happen to our girl? She'll probably end up like the real Serafi, gone. Gotta do something about it before that happens. So she needs to ditch that tyrant of an earl, legally if possible. The awful feelings the real Serafi went through back then, she's not even gonna try to imagine them. The quickest fix right now is to get the Earl and Countess divorced. But the Countess isn't in any shape to do that. Before putting her plan into action, Serafi mentally apologized for becoming a real piece of work. Oh, by the way, that word doesn't just mean spawn of, so technically it's not a swear, she thought with relief. She roughly remembers the original story, but she has zero clue about the rules or laws of this world. So first things first, she hauled ass to the massive library to dig up any books on trials and laws. The librarian awkwardly told her she should check out the West Wing. On the way, Serafina kept bitching about how it takes a solid 30-minute hike just to get to a normal wing of the library. The story mentioned this place used to be the main palace of some kingdom, a detail that's only now popping into her head. But that's not the point right now. The real question is, what's up with this fragile body's stamina? Why does she get tired so damn fast? Out of nowhere, someone she didn't know, but with a gentle voice, asked Serafina if she was all right. The main character instantly recognized that shimmering silver hair and those piercing yellow eyes. Carl Iris, who played a pretty big role in this story, immediately recognized Lady Validus. Serafina was thrown, wondering how he knew the name of even a background character, but he explained he recognized her by her hair color. I mean, blue hair is a pretty unique and defining trait of the noble Validus family. The main character immediately thanked Sir Iris for his help. A little surprised, the guy wondered how the lady knew about him. The girl started frantically thinking of a lie, and then her gaze caught on the crest on the handsome man's scabbard. The iris leaf design engraved on it is an ancient and recognizable symbol of the Iris family. Without hesitation, the girl asked the man for help, and together, they went to the library, where Carl helped her get books from the high shelves. The Marquis's son was noticeably surprised that the lady was actually going to read all of this. Just like the main character thought, there really is a separate law for aristocrats. Serafi decided to start her search with keywords. Soon she found several pages that detailed a way to become the legitimate head of the family without any repercussions. Sir Iris, sitting peacefully to the side, jumped when the young lady suddenly slammed the book shut with a loud bang after a while. The main character thanked the man sincerely, because thanks to him, she managed to find the crucial, life-saving information she needed. The girl didn't even notice how quickly time flew by, so it was time to head back to the mansion. Settling into the carriage, Serafina thanked the noble Carl from the bottom of her heart. The man, looking at her, told the lady that she had chosen a very difficult path, so Sir Iris figured it out after all. The lady replied with a light smile, saying it was way better than getting the stuffing knocked out of her. Carl Iris knows about the Validus family, most likely because he heard the story about the Earl's only daughter being mistreated. Damn, what a stand-up guy! The main character thought admiringly. Serafina once again heartily thanked the valiant knight and held out a delicate necklace to him. And then she asked for one more, final favor. 1 month from today, after 8 in the evening, Carl must come to the Validus mansion and return this necklace to her. If we pull this off, Seraph Validus actually has a shot at surviving and turning his messed-up life around. The second the lady got back, the butler told her that her mom had just taken her meds and was resting in her room. The main character only had a month to get ready for the trial. The butler jumped and spun around when the lady suddenly called out his name, Seraph, with determination blazing in her eyes, decided to use this short time to plan everything down to the last detail. So, with a sly grin, she asked the butler if he didn't want to get rid of her awful father. Seraph insisted that she was completely serious right now. She's gonna kick that jerk out of the family and become the new countess herself, fair and square. The butler figured the lady was planning to restore the family's name, but that wasn't exactly it. She wasn't about to make promises like that. In this situation, the least she can promise is that she'll be 1,000,000 times better than her cruel father. The guy nodded, looking relieved, and asked how he could help the future countess with her noble cause. First things first, the main character asked him to stop looking so lost and hopeless. Seraphi promised to lead the way and just asked the butler to follow her for 1 month, trusting her. The maid, Marin, caught the butler again, heading off somewhere, probably to meet with the young mistress. Stunned, the guy couldn't believe his ears, saying the young mistress had clearly lost her mind. That day was weird, and for Lady Felicia, these were the unhappiest days of her life. Word is, there was a fire in the magic tower today, supposedly caused by an experiment of Lady Felicia, the Duke's daughter. Seraphi keeps flashing back to the first line of the original story, which means everything's playing out just like in those memories. Seraphi pulled out a heavy sack of gold coins. She explained to the butler that she lifted the money from her father's pocket after slipping him a little something in his drink to help him sleep. Living like this would drive anyone crazy, she thought. But at least this way she could have a little fun. The lady said she'd become a countess, but the butler never imagined she meant becoming just like the Earl. The girl headed into the noisy city to buy lottery tickets. What's more, she picked out 10 whole tickets with the exact same numbers, so the butler had absolutely no idea what she was doing. He tried to stop her, but it was already too late. The butler didn't understand why the lady bought up those lottery tickets, since the family's finances couldn't get any worse. To which Seraphi, with a sly smile, replied that the lottery was a magnificent chance to hit the jackpot. Next, she firmly ordered him to head to the nearest racetrack. It's all the same, the butler thought in horror. The young miss has decided to become exactly like the current Earl. But it got even worse. Now the butler was sure he was about to faint from what he was seeing. It was pretty clear after the young lady took that beating, she'd finally lost it. The butler's eyes bugged out when she started betting on horses to finish in the top 3. The poor guy tried to tell her the odds of guessing that were basically 0, plus she picked the worst horses. He just couldn't figure out why she kept doing stuff like this, putting them all at risk. Serafina calmly asked the butler what he'd do when they finally had some cash. She told him to name his favorite suit brand, cufflinks, ties, and shoes, promising to buy him everything as soon as they hit it big. Truth is, in the novel, this day was Felicia at her weirdest. She randomly wrote down numbers that seemed like the worst possible choices, but that very hour, against all odds, they struck gold, and a record-breaking win was logged, shocking everyone. The horses that were fighting for last place inexplicably crossed the finish line in reverse rainbow order. When the lady's win became obvious, the butler, wasting no time, asked for his back pay. He's got a wife and kids back home to feed, you know. The Ortus Empire's known for being brutal, but they cultivate this love for flowers and plants, using them as the ultimate sign of approval, a shining golden sun, with orchids and irises blooming underneath. Those were the symbols of the Empire's powerful ruling houses. The third prince of the Empire, Estir Ortus, told his friends with a smile that it had been way too long since they'd all hung out like this. He noticed Carl looked kinda down and guessed that Lady Looney had called off their engagement. But the knight explained that he'd actually met Lady Validus recently. He told his buddies about the lady's bold plan to take over as head of her family, which totally surprised them. But Carl doubted she could pull it off, since she probably didn't even get the proper education to be an heir. The third prince raised his wineglass and announced that granting a title is the emperor's sacred right. Questioning his choice is basically like telling the emperor to shove it. Orcus Felicia wondered if this was even possible to pull off. With a sly grin, the third prince replied that it was totally doable, if it was a forced inheritance trial. But Astir thought Carl was sticking his nose where it didn't belong. The knight, with a hint of sadness, replied that everyone and their mother knew about the lady's dire straits. But her eyes, despite everything, burned so bright, like she was fighting a never-ending, desperate battle all alone. Being a valiant knight and unable to help, Carl felt pathetic and helpless, but he was too ashamed to say anything to the lady. His friend asked the knight how much time Miss Validus gave him to complete her task. Now the maid, Marin, according to the butler, finally understood why the young lady was able to pay their long-awaited wages. However, the man was still super stressed, because the young lady had bought a ton of completely useless wastelands and properties. That month she was talking about is almost up, but I still can't figure out how the lady plans to play this in court. By the end of the month, Serafi, much to her satisfaction, finally managed to dig up enough solid dirt on the Earl's dealings. By playing the romance angle just right, the family's finances got a serious boost. With the money she made, Serafi covered the living expenses and generously paid all the servants the back wages they were owed. And with what was left, she bought some extra land. If anyone could have seen the looks on the servants' faces then, they probably think she's just like the Earl now. Now, if Carl shows up on time, this whole complicated scheme is definitely going to pay off big. Sure, there's a small chance the knight won't make it, but our girl's got to keep the faith. The butler came into the room and informed the young mistress that the master of the estate had just returned home. Serafi asked how her mom was doing and learned that she was still in her room with the maids. All right, looks like our main character can finally kick off her long-planned scheme. From the second-floor balcony, she spotted the Earl back at it again, clutching a bottle and going wild. That's the very thing her father used to strike her down back then. A fatal blow. Because of that brutal act, the body's original owner bit the dust, and our main character from another world took her place. The Earl looked up and grinned when he saw his daughter, but the servant holding him back looked terrified. Serafina stared at the killer of his only daughter, her gaze icy and blank. And then, quietly but firmly, she told her father to knock it off with the ruckus. The Earl flinched, totally clueless about what his daughter was saying or what she meant. Suddenly, the main character rushed to her father, begging him not to hurt himself, pleading with him to stop right now. The Count wasn't about to let his daughter off the hook so easily after she swiped his cash and blew it all. Just then, two massive dudes showed up unannounced at the estate. Carl remembered perfectly. The young lady had specifically asked him to shout her name loud and clear. The knight planted himself right in front of the entrance and yelled, loud enough for the whole courtyard to hear, "For Lady Validus." He announced that he was there to return her necklace. The main character spun around instantly, hearing the familiar voice of the knight coming to her rescue. The butler hurried to open the door for the guests, saying they'd been expecting them. Seraph's friendly act vanished. She grabbed the Count by the collar and asked him, with a sneer, what his problem was. She just didn't get why a grown man would only pick on the weak and defenseless, tormenting them like that. What a pathetic display of power, she thought, then suggested the Count just crawl off and quietly kick the bucket somewhere by himself. Or the heroine could just off him herself. It's the only way the Earl's daughter will finally rest in peace. The estate owner wasn't going to take that sass anymore, so he wound up to clock her with a bottle. Feeling the moment coming, the main character squeezed her eyes shut, thinking it was time to get this show on the road. Just then, a figure flashed in front of her, and she cautiously cracked open one eye. Serafi's face went straight to shock when she recognized Orcus Felicia, who was suddenly holding her. Thing is, she had absolutely no clue why he was here, in their mansion. Another second, and something really bad would have gone down. Carl quickly tied the Earl's hands, plopping him down hard in a chair, and gave Lady Validus a worried look. While Orcus helped the girl up like a total gentleman, the knight said he didn't want to keep doing things he'd be ashamed of. Hearing that sincere confession, the main character couldn't help but let out a quiet, nervous giggle. She took a huge gamble, betting on the basic decency of people, and damn, it actually paid off. The Earl, totally losing it, called his daughter a monster and screamed, "What in the world do you think you're doing? She's been playing the innocent the whole time, but behind my back, she's been messing around with other guys," he yelled, laying into her. Serafi smirked, thinking this wasn't even funny anymore, just pathetic. The only daughter the Earl raised with violence and cruelty? She died a long time ago in this miserable house. Orcus was stunned when the young lady suddenly snatched the sword from his scabbard with surprising strength. The main character walked up to the Earl, her eyes blazing with determination, and jammed the sword right where it counts. The man screamed bloody murder, his shriek slicing through the mansion's silence. Back in her previous life, the main character grew up with loving parents, so she wasn't about to put up with this kind of crap. Now, all Serafi had to do was exact the ultimate revenge for the body's original owner and punch her ticket to a better life. Later, relieved, the girl thanked the knightly gentleman for arriving just in the nick of time. Orcus explained he'd just been following a friend. The main character was definitely lucky to meet the heir of the ducal house, second in importance only to the emperor's family. Maybe she can even get help from him in the upcoming difficult trial. This was a shot. The man announced that Count Validus would be handed over to the Imperial Knights by Sir Iris and arrested like the lowlife he is. If the lady hands over the relevant documents to the Imperial Knights, who will arrive soon, the case will be dealt with swiftly. But if the girl wants to win the trial, she better keep a low profile and think things through. Seeing the Duke's son glaring at the lottery tickets, Seraph exclaimed it was just a fluke. The man cut Seraph off, advising her to hide that stuff before the knights arrive, if she wants to avoid any unnecessary complications. And then he headed for the exit, while the heroine mentally fumed about him interrupting her without hearing her out. She couldn't help herself, flipped him the bird, and silently hoped the jerk would watch his back. Seraphina was absolutely livid at this pushy, cocky dude's behavior. Orcus stopped, sensing a tense, nasty vibe coming from behind him. But the second he turned around, the main character flashed him a friendly, sweet smile. However, the Duke's son caught the rude gesture and called her out on it, because this lady can't keep a secret to save her life. The main character quickly learned that rumors spread faster than a runaway horse. As soon as they saw Seraphina, people started whispering, calling her classless for suing her own father. Apparently, this scandalous gossip was pretty entertaining for bored, idle aristocrats. A lot of people couldn't understand how a lady could bring such a heartless lawsuit, even if her father had laid a hand on her. On one of these particularly annoying days, Seraphina had enough of the rumors. She took off her hat, showing off her new short haircut to the world. People immediately started whispering that it looked absolutely terrible. Now, let's rewind 7 days before the trial to understand how things got this bad. Marin, the maid, anxiously asked the young lady if they really stood a chance of winning the case. Judging by the fact that the court approved it, they definitely have a good shot at succeeding. But if they happen to lose, Seraphina offered the staff to leave and live together, saying she could provide for that many people. They, in turn, were deeply touched by the lady's words, her kindness and care. They immediately started encouraging the young lady, asking her not to worry too much, because they were bound to win. Since they're facing such a serious matter, Seraphina thought, I need to change, and she grabbed scissors and cut her hair. No one expected such a desperate, radical action from the lady. The night before the trial, the main character went outside to get some fresh air and clear her head a little. But suddenly, the butler called out to her, cutting through her thoughts. Surprised, she asked him why he wasn't asleep yet, and he replied that he didn't get much sleep these days either. It was right here that the young lady made him the offer. But the butler felt terrible that she had taken on such a burden. He felt the need to tell her something important, something that would finally bring her the peace of mind she desperately needed. No matter what happens tomorrow, the young lady needs to know that she's not alone in this world anymore. Seraphina decided that even if she disappeared soon, she would do everything possible to make sure these people could live in peace, and returning to her old body would come after that. Honestly, the situation was pretty messed up. The plaintiff is an abused daughter, and the defendant is her tyrant father. Before she could enter the courtroom, someone called out to the young woman, asking how she was doing, which took her by surprise. A happy, genuine smile immediately lit up the main character's face. Sir Iris and Sir Felicia stood like two pillars right in front of her. Orcus immediately noticed the lady's significant change in appearance, and the main character joked that she'd cut her hair and made soup out of it. From a brief conversation, the girl learned that the two men had come here as her witnesses. Moreover, since Lady Validus doesn't have a guardian right now, the men, as those present, will be around. Still, they can only help with testimony, so they won't be of much more assistance. Orcus gave his honest opinion. He's sure the lady has absolutely no chance of winning this trial. The main character didn't say anything, just smiled mysteriously in response to his pessimistic words. A little earlier, Sir Felicia had specifically approached his father to ask permission to attend the trial as a witness. Calling it good experience, the Duke gave the go-ahead and asked his son to clear his schedule for the month. Some lady urgently approached him with an important matter, so the head of the family decided to entrust it to his son. Snapping out of his thoughts, Orcus pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. Tying it around the young lady's neck, he told her to try and win, since she was so dead set on it. The main character answered, short and sharp, that she would win, period. Orcus replied that confidence can easily turn into overconfidence. A bailiff came out into the hallway and asked the Earl's daughter, Lady Serafi Validus, and two witnesses to come inside. The heroes strode purposefully, with firm steps, into the large, majestic courtroom. The main character was surprised they were holding court in a place like this. This is just a fancy ballroom, not some courtroom. If she'd known, she would have dressed up a little. Look at that jerk all decked out. Orcus reminded the young lady that there were a lot of eyes on them, to which she replied that she hadn't done anything wrong. The guy knew she was pissed, but Serafi just said she didn't actually say anything. Orcus explained that she was saying plenty with those eyes of hers. Sir Iris walked up, and seeing their unhappy faces, asked, all confused, why they were at each other's throats again. Just then, Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, entered the hall. Wasting no time, she announced they'd be starting the trial immediately. The defendant was given the floor first. Count Validus slammed his fist on the table, yelling that he never mistreated his wife or his only daughter. When they asked the noble to explain the injuries on the lady's body, he said his daughter just had really delicate skin. Even a little bump would bruise her up bad. As for the servants' testimony, claiming they saw the abuse with their own eyes, the count said they weren't credible at all. He pointed at the headmaid and said she actually had terrible eyesight. The Earl admitted he messed up big time with his daughter, but he just thought he was being a strict parent. The main character raised an eyebrow, totally confused, staring at her dad. He then added that it was outrageous to be shamed in front of so many people over something so trivial. Carl chuckled and muttered that the Earl was surprisingly eloquent when he wasn't drunk. Lady Looney Farrens asked her friend what she thought about all this. Felicia figured his strategy of downplaying everything as a minor family squabble wasn't half bad. Ladies nearby immediately started whispering that the Earl seemed like a decent guy, and the young lady had nothing but accusations. She calls herself an aristocrat, but she looks like a total mess. The always busy Empress will probably just make a decision based on the general vibe in the room. But is Lady Validus really as fragile and miserable as she seems? The whole room went silent when the main character pulled a pen from her pocket and ripped the hem of her dress. Everyone could see the lady's body was covered in bruises, and Seraph just smirked at her father, asking which memory to start with. Seems like you're all just dying to hear about it. So she bared her shoulder, ready to show them everything, holding nothing back. The mood in the room instantly shifted. Seeing all those bruises, people started whispering that this was way too much. Orcus bowed before her, asking if she really had to go this far, especially with Her Majesty present. Smirking, the girl suggested Sir Felicia take a look around. Everyone finally turned to look at her. The man reached for her hand, asking if she was doing this because she had nothing left to lose. Clutching her hand to her chest, Seraph replied that even if she lost here, she had plenty of ways to come out on top. But right now, she's doing this precisely because she does have something to lose. And then, Seraph turned to address the great Empress of the Empire, and the esteemed lords gathered there. She declared that her father had inflicted unbearable suffering not only on her, but also on her mother and servants, thereby grossly violating the sacred duty of the head of the family. Therefore, her filial duty to inherit the title granted by Her Majesty the Empress would put an end to her father's injustice. The Empress smirked and granted each side the right to call witnesses. Carl and Orcus immediately stood up, and Sir Iris announced that they were direct witnesses to what had happened. Although the Earl hadn't directly assaulted her then, if the heroes hadn't arrived to retrieve the necklace, the young lady would have been in serious danger. The butler confirmed this, adding that the wounds on the young lady's body were clear evidence of long-term abuse. Marin saw everything too. Once, the Earl threw a bottle at the lady. She was laid up in bed for 3 days with a busted head. After listening to everything carefully, the Empress asked the defendant's witnesses to give their testimony. At that very moment, one man stood up in the hall. He said she might have been disciplined a little harshly, but she definitely doesn't deserve the title. Sometimes the lady acted way worse than the Count himself. She got hooked on gambling and almost blew the family fortune. Agreeing with him, Serafi explained it only happened once, because she had a really good dream. As proof, she was ready to provide the court with all the relevant paperwork. Her lottery ticket won the jackpot, and her bet at the races also paid off big time. So, she wasn't just throwing money away for no reason. The Empress smiled and called the young lady incredibly lucky. It was like she knew she was going to win when she bought all those tickets and bet on those horses. A lot of people started thinking it was a divine dream, but only the main character knew it was all a crock. To inherit the title, you gotta have the skills and the smarts to run the family. Seraph confidently stated that this dream also helped her find a land long abandoned by the gods. Even though the name sounds ominous, its true meaning is that gods once dwelled here, and they left something behind. They were talking about a precious stone. It was filled with mana of the highest purity, and it's a magic amplifier that all mages desperately dream of having. In other words, the main character managed to get her hands on a treasure of the gods. A buzz started in the hall, but the Empress quickly quieted everyone down, asking the young lady if all this was really true. Seraph nodded and explained that the first thing she did was pay the servants their wages, every single one of them, as soon as she got the winnings. And with the money left over, she decided to buy the land she saw in her dream. Then she asked Duke Felicius, a distinguished mage, to conduct an assessment, and the Duke personally confirmed that these were lands abandoned by the gods. Many froze, because now the lady was speaking in the plural. Fionia remembered clearly how her father had mentioned he was planning to pull off some kind of deal with a young lady from a noble family, and the Duke insisted it was a seriously rare opportunity. Lady Felicia now understood why her brother gave that girl his family handkerchief. Count Validus immediately started complaining that his daughter hadn't told him anything, but she didn't think she was obligated to, because she bought everything with her own money. The Empress asked Duke Felicia if what the plaintiff was saying was true. Nodding, the man replied that he had indeed accepted Countess Validus's offer, thereby showing that he already considered the lady a countess. The Duke started praising the lady's wisdom and strength of spirit, and Serafi looked at him skeptically, because there was a time he looked at her like he wanted to do her serious harm. In the original novel, Duke Felicia's family eventually turned against the crown prince, which led to a rebellion, and the family was wiped out. Judging by how closely the Empress is listening to the Duke, the Felicia family's position wasn't so weak that it could be broken so easily. Serafi decided to think about that later. Duke Felicia stepped forward and announced that they would like to present the first treasure of the gods to Her Majesty on behalf of the two families. The main thing now is to demonstrate loyalty to the imperial house and show that Serafi is worthy to bear the new title. The Empress banged her gavel on the table, signaling that she was ready to announce the court's decision, taking into account the defendant's statement that this is just a minor family squabble, and the plaintiff's position, wanting to fulfill her filial duty. After carefully considering the circumstances of both sides, the Empress is ready to deliver the verdict. She rules in favor of allowing the forced inheritance of the Countess Serafi Validus title. That meant the main character had won completely. She was now officially a countess and the rightful head of the family. "You did it," Serafi heard from the side. Orcus smiled at the girl and admitted, "That was seriously awesome." Serafi playfully asked, "Did Sir Felicia really think I'd lose?" Even though she knew he was super worried. The man immediately apologized for getting the wrong idea about those lottery tickets and the bet. Remembering, Serafi quickly tried to return the cloak the hero had given her to cover up, but Orcus asked her to keep it. Sir Felicia also asked the girl to keep the scarf, saying it really suited her. The man's words caught the main character off guard. She laughed and promised to repay him with something even better, since she was about to become the richest woman in the empire. Just then, Countess Validus was called out from the side. Carl congratulated the girl on her victory and introduced her to his fiancé at the same time. The main character nodded, offering a restrained thank you, while Luni Ferenz immediately wished the Countess continued prosperity for her family. But Sir Felicia reminded her that she shouldn't bow her head anymore, since she was now a countess. Seraphi's eyes widened as Orcus congratulated her on inheriting the title. Now it's all just beginning. Until the main character returns to where she used to live, she needs to use the original novel to her advantage. While Looney was sincerely admiring the Countess's magnificence, Orcus asked his sister why she came, and she replied that she just wanted to see. The main character's next goal will be the greatest dark mage from the novel, the future head of the Mage's Tower, Fionia Felicia. Suddenly, the aristocrats rushed towards the young lady, congratulating her on her victory, immediately offering their help in finding her a husband. She needed to come up with something quick, so Seraphi reminded Sir Felicia, who was standing nearby, that he had previously apologized to her. She took his arm, whispering that she would be taking advantage of his kindness for a little while. And then she loudly proclaimed that she knew about Sir Feliki's sincere feelings all along, and that's how she made it this far. So, the Countess promised to listen to the advice of the nobles and gladly accept help from the Duke's house. Soon, instead of sleep, the main character was greeted by a stack of papers she had to sort through before going home. As soon as Sarah finally arrived at the family estate, she felt the incredible fatigue of her weak body. But inside, she was greeted by happy servants and a decorated table. Seraph asked in surprise when they had managed to prepare everything, to which the staff replied that they believed in her victory, so they prepared everything in advance. If the miss had lost, then all of this would have just gone straight into the trash. The main character suggested that everyone eat together, since today was a tough day for everyone. The servants looked confused after hearing the Countess's offer, but she explained that she won because of them. But this offer is only good for today, because starting tomorrow, Seraph intends to become a demanding and strict mistress. Marin immediately snatched a piece of bread from the table and exclaimed that in that case, she'd gratefully accept the treats. The head maid immediately started scolding the girl for her lack of manners, while Seraphina told the other servants not to hold back. And then she announced she wanted to personally take her mother dinner. The woman was in her room, constantly staring out the window. After setting the tray down next to her, Seraphina knelt before her mother and told her that she'd managed to win the court case today. Even after everything that's happened, is she really going to say she loves the Count and blame her daughter for taking the title? The main character looked at her mother hopefully, dreading to hear what she'd say next. Unexpectedly, the woman looked at her and said that Seraphina hadn't even done anything wrong, and she felt terrible about it. Seraphina's mom, deeply suffering, just saw herself as useless and weak. While her daughter was working so hard for a whole month, she couldn't even leave this room, like a prisoner. She tried to fight back, begged her family for help, but nothing worked, and eventually she just gave up. While the woman grew weaker and weaker, her daughter only got stronger with each passing day. Mom felt truly awful that she'd burdened her kid with such a heavy load of responsibility and suffering. Through it all, the woman was completely serious, and the main character could see that Mom felt guilty. But it wasn't her fault at all. She was a victim of circumstance herself. After all, she suffered just as much as her daughter from regular, brutal mistreatment and humiliation. And yet she was still apologizing, which seemed unbelievable to Seraphina. That realization made Seraphina cry, because she was so kind and could perfectly understand the feelings overwhelming that woman. But she told her mom that she just got something in her eye. The heroine didn't understand why this sincere apology, of all things, touched her heart so deeply. Seraph wasn't sure if any of this was right, or if she was even doing the right thing, going down this path. Her mom took her hand and told her not to forget that she's strong and smart, and that means she can handle anything. The woman assured Seraph that no matter what, she could still live a happy life. The main character immediately promised her mom the same thing. The woman smiled happily when her daughter suggested starting over, even if it was just now. After all, they have absolutely no reason not to. After a while, the main character looked at the court's verdict and wondered what she was going to do now. Her clothes were completely trashed, totally unsuitable for wearing in polite society. But Maureen immediately chirped up, telling her lady that she knew a great workshop they could go to. While in the carriage, the main character noticed something amazing that caught her eye. Marin's looking a little too happy and energetic right now. The maid confessed she'd always dreamed of going places with the young lady she serves. With Maureen's skills, she could easily get a job at any other mansion. But from the day the young lady took her in, Marin swore to serve her faithfully. The main character didn't even know the old Seraphina had hired Marin. She caught herself thinking she can't get too attached to people in this world. It just leads to trouble. Fionia Felicia and Looney Ferenz were super surprised to suddenly see Countess Validus in the workshop. The main character saw it as a stroke of luck, meeting the Duke's daughter on her very first day with the title, Goal for Today, Become Friends with Fionia Felicia. And first, I got to win over her inner circle. Serafina walked up to Lady Ferenz and said she'd been really wanting to meet her, and was even planning to visit her shop. The main character flashed a bright smile when Looney asked the Countess to visit her once all the renovations were done. And then, with a warm smile, she promised to drop by as soon as she had the chance. In the original novel, Carl and Looney were the only couple with a normal, healthy relationship. Plus, she's Fionia's best friend, so we definitely need to remember this character. With a warm smile on her face, the main character said she was so happy to see them both again. Lady Ferenz's hands started to tremble slightly, with excitement and genuine admiration. She was genuinely thrilled that the incredible Countess Validus knew about her humble little shop. The main character was completely stunned by such an enthusiastic, totally unexpected reaction. Looney went on, praising the Countess's triumphant victory in court, gushing with admiration. Fionia Felicia said with a light smile that apparently the Countess hadn't quite realized what she'd managed to pull off. Seraph just cribbed the description of how Lily struck it rich on the god's land straight from the novel. But could this be turning out to be a way bigger deal than our girl initially thought? Lady Felicia told the Countess not to sweat it, because she'd soon know so much she'd be sick of it. Then, she showed Seraph a killer dress, saying it would look amazing on her, really bring out her beauty. Before long, our main character was getting a taste of the everyday, jam-packed lives of the aristocracy. The head maid announced the arrival of the custom-made outfits, a servant brought a flower that had bloomed in the garden, and a maid asked where to serve breakfast. What used to stress her out so bad was now normal, even comfy, totally part of her new life. The butler brought the Countess her mail, and looking at the insane pile, Seraph wondered if they multiplied like rabbits. And get this, that was just the morning mail, which blew her mind even more. It seems like Seraph made a good impression on the aristos, but for now, she's just easy pickings to them. A lot of people think the main character's just a pretty face, all looks and no substance, not capable of much. Isn't it a little much, though, to just openly send a marriage proposal like that? Baron Cadio is one of the Crown Prince's closest guys. Ever since our girl won that court case, this bootlicker of the Crown Prince keeps sending her marriage proposals. And every single day. So Serafi just told the butler to use all those annoying letters for kindling. The main character worked so hard to get where she is, but she never imagined she'd run into problems like this. This can't go on, though. This is seriously crossing a line, she thought. Completely ticked off, Serafi just doesn't have time to deal with this crap. So she quietly muttered, maybe she should just bury him somewhere. Suddenly, a man appeared next to her and unexpectedly asked if she was planning on getting into the funeral business. The main character screamed in surprise. The scare made her stumble, and she lost her balance, starting to fall fast. But Orcus was right there to catch the Countess, asking her to be careful with just a hint of worry in his voice. The girl thanked Sir Felicia right away, but he told her there was no need for thanks. Then Orcus, with a slight smile, offered the Countess his hand. Twice a week, Seraph Validus and Sir Felicia discussed their joint project, what to do with the lands abandoned by the gods. Because of this, they meet often and seem to have gotten a little closer, despite their differences. Orcus seemed impossible at first, but now Seraph feels comfortable around him, and he probably feels the same. The main character checked the documents and noticed the Mage's Tower on the list of enterprises needed for development. Nothing's set in stone yet, but the Mage's Tower is the most advanced when it comes to tech, Orcus explained. Surprised by his answer, the girl asked, confused, didn't the Mage's Tower only study magic? An awkward silence hung in the carriage. Orcus eyed the mist suspiciously and said that was the case a few centuries back. He thought to himself that this young woman had seemed really weird and off from the start. How could someone be so clueless about worldly matters? He wondered, looking at her. What really baffled Orcus was how she managed to win the lawsuit and get the land in her condition. The Duke's son smirked at the Countess, asking who she was planning to bury and what her problem was. He'd clearly overheard her back at the mansion, talking about wiping out an entire family. With a strained smile, Seraphi asked the gentleman not to twist her words. which were just spoken aloud to herself. As a knight, Orcus just couldn't stand by. He felt obligated to step in, to which the girl replied that right now, she secretly wanted to bury him. The main character wondered if she could tell him her secret. She'd totally forgotten that in the novel, Orcus was portrayed as a selfish, inconsiderate villain. But it turned out to be completely different in reality, and honestly, he's the only one she can turn to for advice. Having made up her mind, Seraphi announced that she'd received a marriage proposal. Orcus thought for a moment, then replied that it was a pretty cheap and cliché manipulation tactic. But still, he decided to ask which family was involved, and learned it was the influential Cadio family. Seraphi was genuinely outraged. She and this fiancé hadn't even met, and he was already bombarding her with proposal letters. The man replied that the aristocracy's hierarchy wasn't so simple, realizing clearly that the Countess really didn't know anything. This hierarchy is determined by the family's history, its honor, its wealth, and many other complicated factors. Seraphi became wary, because the Duke's son had said the Cadio family was quite influential and powerful. One thing Orcus knew for sure, no family, not even the powerful Felicia family, could just ignore the Cadio family like that. They started out as a family of clergymen, so pious that they've produced the high priest twice. Plus, the Cadio family owns those gold mines in the northwest, the ones their ancestor discovered while on a mission. Because of that, there used to be rumors going around that they were directly blessed by the gods, which brought them good fortune. Seraph decided to try and summarize everything and asked Sir Felicia to check if she understood correctly. The Cadio family's situation right now must be the polar opposite of the main character's dire straits. The fact that they can get away with such a rude proposal means they have enough power to pull it off. This family has connections to the Crown Prince, and on top of that, owns a ton of valuable resources. And those are probably the very same vast northwestern gold mines, loaded with treasure. But aren't they running dry? Seraph wondered. If they were called a blessing from the gods, this would be a devastating blow to them. Makes sense they'd be all over Seraph like that, seeing her as their new golden goose. I mean, the girl's sitting on land abandoned by the gods, which is a freaking gold mine. But at the end of the day, the real reason is she's just too small and vulnerable. She hasn't earned anything on her own. From the trial to this whole project, she wouldn't have gotten anywhere without the Felicia family holding her hand. That's why everyone's swarming her, trying to use her for their own shady agendas. This is just the beginning. Like Fionia Felicia said, Seraph's gonna be sick of this real soon. A hard-won title just gets you a seat at the table. What really matters is your rep and honor. The heroine's already fed up. She doesn't get why she has to clean up her deadbeat dad's mess from day one. She'll work herself to death at this rate. Orcus was amused by the young lady's words. A slight smile appeared on his face, and he promised they'd definitely collect the remains. Shaking off those nagging thoughts, Seraphina suggested they double-check the contract before heading out to see the land. She pointed out the weird proportions, but the Duke's son replied that they were set according to mining industry standards. However, the main character considered it a total outrage, to which Orcus replied to the Countess that she was now on par with the Cadio family. But Seraphina took it as if the man had just called her trash. "Maybe I should carry you," Orcus said as Countess Validus stepped out of the carriage, but she politely declined. Placing the hat on her head, the man asked how she was feeling, since she kept swaying, but Seraphina replied that it wasn't that bad. Still, no matter how you looked at it, it was just a regular dessert, so stealing the treasure wouldn't be a problem. But as soon as Orcus explained that there was no real need, that the land was cursed, Seraphina tried to bolt. The man explained that even his father, who was a court mage, couldn't use magic when he came here. Just because the Countess gave the okay, the Duke was able to use magic to check out this land. He couldn't even conjure up a flame to light a cigarette, but he could use high-level magic to scan the Earth's depths. This weird phenomenon bugged him, so he told his son, which is why Orcus was sneaking around here with his dad behind the Countess's back. But even then, they got nowhere, because it wasn't just about the magic. Seraph was stunned seeing that dark blob in the guy's hands, and he explained it was his aura. When the lady gets spooked, it fades. They say auras are similar to magic, but they work completely differently. That's why they're distinct. Suddenly, the power got stronger, because now that the Countess knows it's an aura and isn't afraid, it's amplified. In other words, nothing can be done on this land without Seraph's permission, meaning this land answers to her. The main character had never heard of such a thing. That's something only the god of this land could do. A gust of wind blew the young woman's hat right off her head and carried it away. Serafina couldn't wrap her head around why such a huge deal was never even mentioned in the original novel. She'd had her doubts before. The Felicia family just didn't strike her as the type to start a rebellion and die over some broken engagement. Then again, Katio, the crown prince's right-hand man, who was supposed to be a good guy in the book, is pulling some seriously shady moves. If things were going according to the original plot, Orcus would be executed for treason. But if there are this many differences from the original, or variables they didn't account for, maybe she could actually change the story. For a villain, Orcus is way too conscientious and a genuinely good dude, so Serafina straight up asked him not to, kick the bucket this time. The guy was totally lost, and then the main character invited him to dinner at her mansion. As Fionia came down the stairs, she heard a guest shout her name like he was pumped to see her. Looking up, the girl saw Estir, the Empire's third prince. He complimented the hard-working miss for already heading to the mage's tower. But Fionia didn't get what the prince was doing here since early morning. She quickly figured out Esther was there because of her brother's business, and the prince confirmed it. Fionia said her brother was probably at the training grounds, but she got confused when Estir said he knew. The blonde explained that staring at sweaty muscles first thing in the morning wasn't really his thing, so he was waiting for Orcus to finish up. Got it! The girl tossed back and headed for the door. That kinda stung the third prince, 'cause she didn't even hear him out. Truth was, he wanted to tell Fionia something important. Her fiancé, the crown prince, had been getting awfully friendly with some random chick. With a heavy sigh, Esther muttered that he should have talked her out of getting engaged to his brother way sooner. Just then, Orcus walked into the room and asked His Highness what he was going on about. Catching sight of his buddy's ripped, half-naked chest, Estir called him Kitten and playfully said he just came to see him. Orcus said his goodbyes to his friend right away, and the third prince was all like, "Hey, it was just a joke." He wasn't there because of that, just that his mom was a little worried about Sir Felix's health. To which the duke's son replied, "It's not quite at the reportable stage yet, so the prince can just tell her he looked busy. But that's way too short for a report. He needs something specific to tell his mom, so she'll give her son some props." But Orcus reminded his friend that he's acting like a total slacker, so compliments like that are wasted on him. Esther explained that he needs to live even more carefree, so the crown prince will believe he's not after the throne. Has Orcus already forgotten how he helped out at the trial? Esther put in a ton of work to get the Imperial Palace's approval. It was the perfect chance to show the nobles how awesome the Imperial Palace is, all under a perfectly respectable excuse. Plus, his mom needed something to spice up her boring life, so Dad's story was just what she wanted to hear. So, Lady Seraphi Validus finally became Countess Validus. But look, keeping secrets from her brother's watchful eye? That's no walk in the park. That's why Orcus owes the third prince big time. Maybe he can pay him back a little right now. If word of this convo gets out, the crown prince will make his brother pay, which means Esther needs to get on the Empress's good side. Smirking, Orcus said his friend's life sounded exhausting. Esther just laughed and said, "Hey, if you want to survive, you gotta play the game." Orcus finally caved and told him about his trip to that land a few days ago. Turns out, it's a total wasteland. Hiring workers and setting up housing will take some time. Best case, a month and a half, worst case, 2. The third prince thanked his friend. Now he can give his mother some good news. But it's weird. Why hasn't anyone noticed this empty land on the edge of the capital? And how did Seraphi figure it out? The Countess acts like she's got some kind of god-level insight, you know? She becomes head of the family overnight, finds lands that even the gods abandoned, and gets filthy rich. Life's just peachy for her, right? Orcus barely whispered. Before all this went down, she had a really rough time and fought like hell just to survive. Sensing the tension in the air, the third prince immediately said he shouldn't have said that. But why did Orcus get so ticked off when he heard those words? A theory popped into the third prince's head. Could it be that his always cold and emotionless friend has fallen in love? So, out of the blue, Estir asks the knight what he thinks of Countess Validus, but his friend gave the most unexpected answer. Countess Validus reminds him of a dog. The room went dead silent instantly. Esther asked, totally confused, "Is that some kind of weird compliment? Like she reminds you of an adorable puppy?" Turns out, Orcus meant a dog. The third prince had no freaking clue his buddy had such a twisted idea of what a dog even is. So Astyr figured the Countess wasn't just nuts. She was batshit crazy. Before long, the third prince was out of the Felicia family's estate. Suddenly, a woman's voice called out to him. It was Looney Ferenz, all smiles, asking what the prince was doing hanging around the market district since dawn. Scratching the back of his head, Astyr awkwardly said he was just taking a stroll. Right then and there, next to the lady, the prince spotted that dog. Looney Ferenz immediately introduced Her Grace, Serafi Validus, to His Highness Astyr, third prince of the empire. The main character realized this was the dude who, in the original novel, started a whole lot of trouble with the Felicia family. The prince immediately asked them not to be so formal, saying he didn't even realize the girls knew each other. Looney happily explained that they'd met at the tailor's and become friends, and today she promised Serafi to show her some cool spots. No matter how you look at it, the Countess doesn't act like a real mean dog. She's more like a whiny little pup. The main character admitted that she still feels awkward when people address her by her last name, Validus, because it reminds her too much of her father. The third prince agreed with the Countess, saying she needs to get used to it, so he understands how she feels. So, like Looney, Astyr asked the Countess for permission to call her by her first name. Of course, the main character agreed, but asked him not to use any cutesy nicknames. The prince remarked that Serafi spends so much time with Orcus that even their manner of speaking has become similar. But the Countess thought she was better than Orcus, and the third prince laughed and replied, he didn't know the Countess had such a talent for jokes. The Orcus the main character saw was nothing like a villain. Seems like people actually trust him. This original storyline is seriously messed up. And that's not all. Prince Astyr and Looney Ferenz get along great, so the heroine couldn't figure out how that went down. Astyr teamed up with the Felicia family, and Looney, along with Carl, is backing the crown prince. Anyone would say he's a slacker who doesn't care about the throne, so why was he trying to… Well, maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. The uprising happened in the second half of the original story, so maybe their relationship will go south later on. Too many loose ends. Gotta really wrap my head around this. Astyr and Looney saw the Countess's weird expression and asked if she was okay. Serafi awkwardly explained that she was just tired. She totally forgot she's got the stamina of a goldfish. The heroes decided to chill, so they hit up an art gallery, a place where you could actually buy some paintings too. Looney explained that finding good art is a big deal for them, and not something you can just pawn off on the servants. Though Seraph would kinda like it if they knew a little something about it themselves. For the high society types who only care about appearances, art is just a way to flex their refined taste. Maybe this could be a chance for our main character to boost her family's rep and prove she's got what it takes as the head of the house. Out of the blue, Looney asked Seraph if any of the art had caught her eye. All the paintings were good, but the Countess was looking for something else, so she wanted to see more. The gallery worker then showed them a case full of sketches, unexhibited stuff from unknown artists and up-and-comers. If Seraph digs an artist's style, the gallery can help her connect with them and offer some support. If a supported artist's work gets good reviews, the patron aristocrat's reputation gets a boost too. But Astyr and Looney both immediately turned down the patronage, each with their own reasons. The main character forced a smile, realizing she was making trouble for herself. All the pieces are amazing, but they're all kinda similar, nothing that really grabs you. Seraph asked what would happen to the paintings if nobody sponsored them. The third prince said they'd be burned or thrown away. That's just how it goes when people don't care. The main character replayed Astyr's words in her head, which for some reason really stuck with her and made her think. She knew all too well how awful it was to be pitied without discrimination. Suddenly, she noticed something amazing that immediately caught her eye. The young woman immediately grabbed the paperweight. Looney was pleased to see the Countess liked one of the paintings. "Looks like it, yeah," Serafi replied. Looking at the colorful part of the painting through the paperweight, she really dug it. A little later, the butler asked the mistress, confused, where the crate came from, since she'd said she only bought paintings. Serafi replied that these were the paintings, and asked him to call Marine and Tara to unpack and hang them. She also added that more of the paintings she ordered would be arriving soon. Soon the maids arrived and greeted their mistress. The main character explained to the girls that she had called them specifically to entrust them with the care of the paintings. You need to take the paintings out of this crate, put them in frames, and hang them on the walls, and you'll also need to rotate them every 2 weeks. The maids started to worry about whether they were allowed to touch these paintings, but Serafi told them not to sweat it. They're just sketches by some unknown artist. Marin and Tara's faces instantly lit up with joy. Then the maids noticed another painting in the lady's hands, so the main character explained that a guest would be arriving soon. For some reason, the maids assumed it was Lord Felicia coming and immediately volunteered to prepare refreshments. But the main character quickly replied that it wasn't him. Serafina didn't like the girls' reaction, as if they wanted to say that Lord Felicia was their favorite. Marin explained that when the lady returns from a walk with the Lord, she always looks very happy. Tara confirmed this and added that when the lady dines with Sir Felicia at the mansion, they always laugh and talk a lot. Everyone knows that Lord Felicia is usually a man of few words, but it's different with the lady. He even smiles. The main character's face flushed crimson, and she immediately exclaimed that they were just business partners, so there was no need for wild speculation. The girls didn't say anything more and got to work. Seraph couldn't even imagine anyone misunderstanding her, but Marin's words echoed in her head. She always looks so happy when she gets back from walks with him. Leaning against the wall, she mentally confessed that she smiled at those times because that grump was just too damn handsome. Just then, the butler informed her that the paintings from the gallery had arrived, along with the artist she requested. The artist, Adar, greeted the countess and called her beautiful, just like her impeccable taste. When he heard that the countess had taken him under her wing, the guy was incredibly flattered. Not to brag, but Adar proudly admitted that many nobles had shown interest in him before. Seraph tried to smile, but it got harder and harder with each passing minute. She never expected this artist to be such a conceited jerk. The main character frowned when the artist casually mentioned that the countess had even bought up sketches by other artists at triple the price. The guy froze, totally thrown, when Serafina asked in a serious voice who ratted her out, since she asked them to keep it secret. Even if they weren't on display, those are valuable pieces. The artist poured his heart and soul into them. She felt for them on her own. That's why she wanted to pay, so she'll have to sort things out with the gallery. Serafina made it clear to the gallery that she'd meet the artist first, and only then would she agree to be a patron. Adar jumped up, asking, "Doesn't that mean that you're planning to offer patronage?" The artist's blatant behavior really rubbed the main character the wrong way. She explained calmly that he had completely misunderstood the situation. Lady Farron's family and His Highness, the third prince, were with her at the time, so they can vouch for everything. Adar slumped back into his chair, defeated. The main character wondered if she should just kick this guy out. But hey, work pays the bills, right? In this empire, where they're all about flowers and plants, this writing style, using nature as decoration, it's gonna blow up real fast, I'm telling you. Plus, it's not just about getting rich. This is power, the kind that can shake things up in the art world. Serafi already knew Adar was talented, but she wanted to see it for herself, so she asked him to show off his skills. This painting will be the foundation for boosting the main character's reputation and respect. Adar's got this serious look now. Maybe it's a good thing he's like this, even if it takes a while. If, in the end, the main character can ditch that trashy image her dad saddled her with, and finally get some class, the kind you'd expect from a countess. This thing's gonna be worth even more than money can buy, which is why Serafia figured she absolutely had to have it. Before long, the artist put the finishing touches on his work. Taking a good look, the main character said it was totally mind-blowing. Adar puffed out his chest and said that because the countess had waited so patiently, he was able to really show what he could do. He suggested they sign the contract now, but the main character said they'd talk about it later. Then she told the artist to leave, and he sadly apologized to her ladyship for the bother. Staring at the painting, the main character realized it wasn't what she was hoping for at all. The thought of it just kept bugging the young woman, even after a while. Serafia jumped when Sir Felicia called out to her, really trying to get her attention this time. She snapped her head up and asked her companion, all flustered, what he'd just said. Orcus went silent, studying the girl intently. Then, he set the documents aside and suggested she take a little break. The main character immediately apologized for spacing out, but the man replied that it was no big deal. Serafi had to admit, this guy was so handsome and well-built that it was captivating just watching him, whatever he did. Out of the blue, Orcus said if the Countess ever needed to, take care of something discreetly, just give him a heads up, and the heroine plastered on a smile. Sir Felicia chuckled when the girl backed off her idea. But if that wasn't it, the man asked what was up this time. The main character hesitated again, wondering if she should bring it up. The gallery screwed her over and sent a different artist. She put the patronage contract on hold back then. But who the heck is behind this whole scam? Either way, if it comes out that even commoners scammed the Countess, it'll be a death blow to the family's honor and reputation. Orcus gave the girl a skeptical look when she awkwardly asked if she could handle all the responsibility dumped on her. The main character was taken aback when the guy straight up asked if she was the Countess who stuck his sword where the sun don't shine on Count Validus. Seraphie snatched the sword from the Imperial Knight and put incredible pressure on her parent, who was tearing the family apart. In that moment, the girl's gaze was like a traveler crossing the desert, guided only by a single constellation in the night sky. The main character looked at the man in surprise when he called her someone who doesn't know despair. That's why Seraphie shouldn't try so hard to sell herself short. The girl wanted to say that wasn't the case at all, but the man insisted that it was. The threatening letter from the Cadio family and the family's low reputation, it all makes the Countess feel crushed. None of this is her fault, though, the man said, his voice serious. Seraphie looked away, all awkward, and asked him to cut the flattery, 'cause he barely knew her. But Orcus just doubled down, saying it wasn't her fault, she was doing great. Didn't you handle everything just fine? The Imperial Knight suddenly asked. The main character finally got it. This guy had been looking at her like that from the start. At the Seraphie, who'd do anything, even mess with the original story of this world, just to get back to her real self. He sees the real her. That realization brought tears to the main character's eyes. Orcus offered to get her more tea since that one was cold, but Seraphie smiled and declined, asking where they'd left off. That's the spirit, the hero said, after Seraphie promised to watch her step, and she called him teacher in response. With a smirk, Orcus suggested they continue the lesson. The main character beamed and replied that Lord Felicia was being awfully kind to her today. But Orcus, with a warm smile, asked her not to flatter him. When Seraphina promised to do everything she could to save his family, Orcus looked at her, puzzled, and said she was out of her mind. Then, the main character asked Lord Felicia if he liked paintings. Soon, Indira, the gallery owner, appeared before the Countess and said it was an honor to meet her. The gallery employee standing behind her also greeted her ladyship. The Countess smiled and explained that she came here on a mission. She recently found a sketch here and wants to know the artist's name. The gallery employee replied that the artist's name is Adar, and Indira remembered he's the very artist the girl recommended. The main character asked them to call him again, as it was time to finalize the contract. The moment they met again, Adar told the Countess he never doubted for a second they'd cross paths again. Seraphie smiled and pulled out a hidden roll, a painting. As soon as the Countess asked Indira if she recognized the item, the woman replied that it was hand-packaged in their gallery. Their gallery takes various measures to prevent fraud, and Indira herself drew this seal in particular. But apparently, the Countess had never actually unrolled this sketch. Confusion washed over Adar's face as the Countess asked if he remembered the sketch he'd provided to the gallery. As soon as he said yes, Seraphie asked him to draw it. And after that, the Countess would decide about his patronage right here, right now. A heavy atmosphere filled the room. The young artist's fate would be decided in this moment. Suddenly, Adar started to get indignant, asking why he had to draw something when he'd already proven his skill at the Countess's mansion. Innocently, she asked if she was really asking for too much. Oryx replied that reproducing the painting was a perfectly reasonable condition to set before signing the contract. If there's one thing you can't fake, it's an artist's style. So, Adar caved, and before long the painting was done. Now the young artist proposed that they sign the patronage contract. She was fine with it, but only if they could verify right then and there that Adar was actually the artist whose paintings she was looking for. Breaking the wax seal and unrolling the scroll, which showed a completely different drawing, Seraphina asked for an explanation. Indira immediately got worried. It was obvious that the style of this drawing was completely different. Adar desperately shouted, "What's the big deal?" And then he confessed that he hadn't liked this girl from the start. The main character's face hardened, and Indira asked the artist what he thought he was doing, talking to the Countess like that. That's when Idar called Seraphie a woman who kicked out her own parents and started acting like she's royalty. The main character put a finger to her lips and told everyone to shut it. Considering how polite the gallery employee was when they first came here, Seraphie decided to give her a chance to explain herself. but the main character told her to keep it straight and to the point. The girl squeezed her eyes shut and in a shaky voice said she didn't know anything. Sarafi accepted that answer and asked the gallery owner what she thought about all this. Indira immediately offered her sincerest apologies on behalf of the gallery. It's a clear oversight on her part. If she'd been paying closer attention, none of this would have happened. The young artist immediately shouted that he had no idea. He's a victim here too, okay? The gallery girl just invited him, and he went to see the countess. Worry flashed across the girl's face. The main character pointed down, giving Adar a sharp order to shut his trap and sit down. The young artist had no choice but to drop to his knees before the countess and clam up. Unable to handle the pressure, the gallery employee burst into tears. Everyone was confused by her reaction, because she was clearly mixed up in this whole mess, and then she confessed. Adar was her lover. She was so bummed that his career kept getting screwed over, so she stirred things up. The main character couldn't believe it. Did this girl really cause all this trouble because of love? Adar shouted that he really didn't know anything. He was tricked too, which means he's also a victim. The gallery employee rushed to her sweetheart and, grabbing his elbow, begged him not to say such things. But Adar immediately shoved the girl away with force. The main character was stunned, and the young artist yelled that she had ruined everything. She did something unnecessary that no one asked for, so everything that happened is her fault. Sarafi suddenly ran up to Adar and kicked him in the kneecap. The young man was immediately thrown backward, and then he grabbed his leg and started screaming hysterically in pain. The main character looked at him coldly and asked if the man was seriously trying to rough someone up right in front of her. Hearing the change in Sarafi's tone, Orcus turned his gaze to her. The main character's face blazed with fury and anger. Orcus grabbed the young woman's hand and instantly felt a warmth spread through him from the touch. The main girl was flustered, and the Imperial Knight asked if she was all right. Sarah's heart started racing, and a faint blush crept onto her cheeks, but she told Orcus she was fine. Adar honestly thought it was obvious the gallery worker was to blame for all this, because he was totally clueless. Even so, the main girl said she wouldn't have signed a contract with him anyway. How come no one, not even Sarah, had taken Adar under their wing yet? The reason's simple. The young artist thinks it's humiliating to have to play the game, but basic respect and politeness, the kind even the gallery worker shows, Adar hasn't displayed once. To which the guy replied that he was just confident in his skills, even without all that other fluff. He definitely didn't think he was someone who didn't belong in the gallery. The main character's in, she definitely sees something in him. Serafina got it after hearing the gallery owner's explanation. The artwork embodies the artist's convictions and pride, and that unique expression is art. After that, paintings that seemed similar now looked totally different. But not Adar's. Guys who can paint at that level? They're a dime a dozen. Even unknown talents, the ones who never made it big. They're not lacking in skill, and some might even be better than Adar. So he's not the artist the main character was looking for. But to everyone's surprise, the main character agreed to give Adar her, him, support. Everyone there immediately looked confused. No one saw that coming. I mean, Adar himself said he was a victim, and that she was the only one responsible, that he didn't know anything. If Seraphie turns him down now, Adar's definitely gonna lay hands on that gallery girl. So our girl's gonna take away his lame excuse. The gallery employee immediately started apologizing profusely to the esteemed countess, saying how deeply sorry she was. Stepping closer, Seraphie said that those apologies were way too little, way too late. The girl betrayed everyone who genuinely believed in her and trusted her. She scorned her own love and shattered even her own self-respect. The gallery girl started shaking like a leaf the second the countess let her go. Our main character was sure that no one would be looking for her now. The young girl was finally free. After a moment, a look of utter confusion spread across the gallery owner's face. Something was seriously bugging her. Countess Validus was offering the young, talented artist a deal that was way too sweet to be true. But the main character promised to nip this whole thing in the bud if there weren't any results. Adar's paintings have to sell in this gallery, and considering the artist's ego, that shouldn't be a problem at all. The gallery owner, with some hesitation, handed the countess the official document. The main character told her to remember, she's only offering her support because she sees the potential. Unable to help herself, Indira called Countess Validus a truly generous and kind person. A contract is a deal and a smart investment, and no matter what, it all comes down to Seraf's benefit in the end. Even though it's a temporary fix to keep things from blowing up, the main character needs to at least get some good paintings out of this situation. If all goes well, Seraph will be able to prove her sharp eye and impeccable taste. But first, the Countess decided to meet the artist she was looking for. From their conversation, the main character learned her name was Vaya, and she was incredibly talented. First thing Seraphi did was ask the artist if she happened to remember which sketch she'd submitted to this gallery. The girl nodded shyly, confirming she did, and our main character asked her to recreate the painting. Basically, our girl wants the young artist to reproduce the painting she sent to the gallery. It'll be the same old critique this time, Via thought. Noble ladies always said the artist's paintings were beautiful, but they lacked a certain refinement. Via had always been turned down for patronage, but she decided she had to do this anyway. Before long, the artist finished her work, presenting her creation. Our main character took the painting and started examining it closely, judging the details. It was so familiar that Seraphi turned to the artist. From now on, she'd be counting on her. The main character decided, relying on her talent. Vaya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her heart pounded with anticipation. Before the Countess left, Indira sincerely thanked her for so wisely defending the gallery's reputation. News then came from the gallery that they were begging the Countess to participate in their upcoming exhibition. Based on Indira's recommendation, the aristocrats eagerly awaited the Countess's visit to this important event. As a result of all this, the main character's reputation underwent a significant transformation, soaring higher. Rumors that the Countess was patronizing a young artist spread quickly. Even Orcus's father heard about it at a meeting. If the Duke Felicia himself attends this meeting, it must be pretty damn important. If they were talking about Seraph, that's a good outcome. Because, money talks. Thanks to the advance she received from the influential Duke Felicia, the heroine was able to offer patronage and boost her reputation. Aristocratic society is such a rat race. They won't snub you if you've got the cash. Orcus noticed that the marriage proposals just kept pouring in for the Countess, non-stop. They were surprisingly persistent. And yet the main character felt a little pleased that the young lord was concerned. To which the Imperial Knight replied that worrying about a business partner was only natural and proper. A subordinate knocked on the carriage and informed Countess Validus that Madame Fionia had completed preparations for the drilling operations. Surprised, the main character immediately got out of the carriage to inspect everything. Suddenly, weightlessly, an elegant hat landed on her head. Turns out, Orcus had thoughtfully placed it there, even though the main character had brought an umbrella today. But if Seraphi was planning on using that awful, tiny, and over-the-top thing, Orcus advised her to just forget about it. He's right, but it kinda pisses her off, though she's willing to admit that the umbrella is heavy and her arm hurts from it. The main character decided that she also needed to prepare a return gift to thank him. Up until now, all her money's been in advance from the Felicia family, but starting today, that's gonna change. Once the full-scale development kicks off, the main character's gonna have her own, earned cash. Thinking about that, the main character spotted the stunning Fionia Felicia in front of her. You could honestly be jealous of this incredible girl's beauty. Seraph gushed to Orcus about how beautiful his little sister really is, to which the guy just replied that her looks were definitely on point. Fionia. Felicia placed her hand on the ground, and the main character knew the show was starting. The lady was about to show off her power. Finally, Seraph's gonna see real powerful magic in action. A glowing magic circle instantly formed around Fionia, and crimson lightning started crackling from it. Lady Felicia's expression remained serious, though. She was totally confident in what she was doing. "You've seen magic before, right?" Orcus asked, watching the main character's reaction. But if the hero says the Duke used magic, Seraphi said he was just standing there, and then it was over. When he was younger, people predicted the Duke would become a master of the Magic Tower, but he had to inherit the title, so it didn't happen. The Magic Tower is a politically neutral organization, but Fionia's got a bit of an ego. She loves being the center of attention. It never happened in the original story, but now Lady Felicia absolutely has to become a master of the Magic Tower. It's the only way the main character will be able to find a way back to her own world. Seraphi said that Lady Felicia will become the best master of the Magic Tower. She genuinely believes it. Orcus admitted his sister's the best at her craft, so the Countess concluded that he and his sister have a good relationship, despite the barbs. The man explained that the digs between family are always genuine. It's just that the Countess doesn't have any siblings, so she doesn't know. However, if Orcus and Fionia really hated each other, there wouldn't even be any talking, and the rare words would be like daggers. So Mr. Felicia better cherish his sister, appreciate her. Just then, a deafening explosion ripped through the air, shaking everything. The main character's eyes sparkled with excitement as she watched the bright, blazing flames in awe. The other mages jumped in, and crimson lightning bolts started flying around, lighting up everything. As soon as the thick smoke began to clear, everyone stared at the hole that had appeared in the ground. Fionia Felicia stood at the front. They'd finally managed to get their hands on the legendary treasure of the gods. Shining diamonds began to sparkle in the magical hole, beckoning with their brilliance. Now the main character is finally rich. Her life is about to change forever. The workers immediately started mining the jewels, but a protective barrier blocked their pickaxes. One of the guys immediately called out to Countess Validus, asking her to let them through the barrier. The main character gave everyone permission to pass, except for the thief who was secretly planning to swipe the jewels. All of this is only happening with the main character's say-so. The main character's eyes lit up with excitement, and she exclaimed, "How could one be so clever?" Raising an eyebrow, Orcus looked at the girl in confusion, not understanding her joy. Seraph immediately asked if they buried her old man here for a few days. Would he be reborn a new person? But all hopes were dashed by Mr. Felicia, who replied that the lady's father would simply croak in that time. Suddenly, a woman's voice from behind announced that trash needs to be buried. It turned out to be Lady Felicia, and the main character immediately began to thank her from the bottom of her heart for everything today. But Fionia believed that she should be thanking the Countess for giving her the opportunity to be present at such a historic moment. The main character figured Lady Felicia probably knew a whole lot about the land abandoned by the gods. Turns out she was right. The girl knew more than most, but the god-forsaken land was still uncharted territory. The reasons for the weird stuff happening there, the treasure it holds, so many secrets, so many guesses. Fionia thought the god's treasure might just be the key to unlocking all those mysteries. If the records are silent about this place, then the land itself is probably ordinary. But we'll have to see. The main character felt super honored to have been of use to young Lady Felicia, helping her out. But then, Lady Felicia suddenly asked the Countess to call her by her name, and the main character's eyes lit up with excitement. She'd just taken another big step toward becoming friends with this mysterious girl. If Fionia really thinks today's events were her doing, Serafi suggested they talk about magic later. The main character was really hoping the lady would take the bait, and her plan would work out. Fionia called it a stroke of pure luck, especially since she's organizing this huge get-together soon. Lady Lune Farrens will be there too, Fionia confirmed. That meant Lady Felicia finally took the bait. Her plan was actually working, so the main character immediately asked to tag along, wanting to be part of their crew. Of course, Fionia said with a smile, and promised to send an invite. Seraph couldn't hide how stoked she was, already looking forward to it. Orcus immediately came over and told her to watch her back, saying the place was a total mess and could be trouble. But Fionia quickly pulled Seraph away from her brother and told him to stop hassling the Countess. She'd be with her and Lune anyway. The main character was taken aback when Orcus snapped something back at his sister, and they started bickering right there. Seraph immediately told them to knock it off, because they had other stuff to deal with first. The first treasure of the gods has been presented to Her Majesty, the Empress. Now, the palace courtiers have no doubt about the Countess's loyalty. Though just recently they looked down on the main character, now their reaction has completely flipped. Seraphia found this spectacle disgusting. The main character's gift isn't just incredibly valuable as a commodity, but also a massive boost to our military strength. And just like that, the problem from the original story is solved. If everything goes well, maybe there won't even be a war, since Seraphia currently owns the land, and the development is being done jointly with the powerful Felicia family. That means the imperial family won't be able to despotically increase their power and seize sole control. And thankfully, there won't be a pointless feud with the influential Felicia family, preserving the fragile peace. Maybe the crown prince won't call off the engagement with Lady Fionia, no matter what. The main character suddenly pictured young Lily, so delicate and fragile, in her mind. Too early to guess what's going to happen, the main character thought, walking into the massive imperial throne room. Right then and there, the Empress was shown the main character's gift. A sly, knowing smirk instantly spread across Her Majesty's face, hinting at trouble. Seraphina curtsied, and said she was so happy to present the Empress with the first treasure she'd ever recovered from the gods. But inside, all the main character could think about was how to avoid offending Her Majesty with careless words. The project's going smoothly, everything's falling into place, but for some reason, Serafina just couldn't shake this bad feeling. Ever since she got that feather, the heroine's real goal and determination to get back to her own world keeps slipping her mind. A few days ago, Serafina got invited to an art exhibit from the gallery as a gift, and they attached the sketch the girl left that day, along with this weird letter that was pinned to it. They say in this empire, the angel who helped God sow the seeds looked like a bird, and its color was the same as this feather. A couple days ago, for her own safety, Orcus advised the lady to bury the treasures of the gods around the mansion. Looks like that wasn't just a random suggestion, because Seraph did it. If she hadn't listened to Orcus, she'd definitely be done for. The treasure of the gods. It's not just some effective and expensive gemstone, it definitely has a much greater value. And for some reason, the gap between the original story and reality keeps widening. These thoughts were really starting to give Seraph a headache. Marin was stoked when her lady asked her to get everything ready for an outing. These paintings are in the style of an artist Seraph loved, and they help her remember who she really is. Every time the main character comes here, she gets bummed out. She couldn't understand how anyone could create art in these conditions. It was totally unfair that a genius like that was stuck living like this. As soon as the main character knocked, the kids were at the door, stoked to see the Countess. Serafi really wanted to move Via out of here ASAP, but there were too many complications. As soon as our girl asked if Via was inside, she heard a voice, all worked up, asking why she was being so selfish. In the doorway, Serafi spotted the artist, head hung low, silently taking the heat. The little girl explained they had a brother studying in another city, and the money the Countess gave them was going to him. That was messed up. What kind of shady stuff were they pulling? Via was stunned and immediately bowed as soon as she noticed the Countess at the door. Leaning against the doorframe, the main character greeted her protégé with a smile. The artist was mortified that the lady caught her like that, and she immediately offered tea, but Serafi declined. The girl explained that her parents gave her room to her brother as soon as they found out their daughter was getting patronage. But our main character straight up said the girl's parents were a disgrace. They dared to pocket the kids' support money, and then piled a bunch of useless younger siblings on her back. With a shaky voice, Via explained that the little ones were still really young, but they helped around the house when she was working. The main character decided to find out if the girl's parents were home right now. Via explained that they haven't been feeling well lately. Seriously? Serafi gave her more money than she planned, specifically so her parents wouldn't bother her. She said out loud that she'd seen scum like this before, but this was a different kind of messed up, so she didn't catch it right away. The Countess immediately told the artist to get out of that house. If she doesn't want to keep living like this, then this choice is the best thing she can do. Because all this time, she's been blowing that support money on her parents' whims, not on herself and her art. Via's body started shaking again, a nervous little tremor. Seraph demanded to know exactly how the artist was spending the money, or she'd cut off her support immediately. The girl blurted out that she didn't have a choice. Her family was drowning in debt. They barely had enough to live on, and they desperately needed money for her brother's tuition. The main character just lost it, yelling about whether Via had any sense at all, or even a brain in her head. The artist couldn't say anything but apologies. Seraph strode right up to the girl and took her hands in hers, and then declared, with total conviction, that Via had to leave home right now and come live with her. Via, her voice shaking, said she was really sorry. She knew she shouldn't have, but she couldn't do anything else. Anyone can screw up, but not fixing it is just dumb. So Seraph asked again if Via wanted out of this house. The main character told the artist to say the first thing that popped into her head, without thinking. Via's family ain't helping her out at all, so at least she needs to have her own back. She's got to look out for herself first, so Seraph asked again, what did Via herself want to do? The Countess's words definitely got the young artist thinking. She asked herself in her head, what did she want to do? What she's drawing, it's not bad, right? Via wants to live too, doing what she loves, and she's not a bad person if she doesn't support her family. Her older brother's using her money to do whatever he wants, and she can't even use her own money to study. All her younger siblings ever do is look for Via, never realizing she needs looking after too. That's why the artist wanted to get out of there, where her efforts were never enough. She screamed her lungs out, just wanting to be left alone for once. Now the main character totally got why she was so captivated by this kid's drawings. The desperate need to escape this reality mirrored Via's own desire to get the heck out of that house. That desperation is what drew Seraph in. Now, looking at the paintings, she no longer felt nostalgic for the place she used to live. Still, Via's drawings remained incredible. Before the Countess could leave the house, a little boy ran up to her. He asked timidly if his sister was really leaving, and if they'd never see each other again. But a voice from behind told the younger brother to knock it off. The kid hesitantly promised he'd take care of his younger siblings from now on. Serafi asked, confused, how the heck this little guy was going to support so many brothers and sisters, including their parents. The kid piped up, saying he earns money sewing too. Barely audible, Serafi muttered that this family was nuts. If the kids really feel bad for Via, there's only one thing they can do right now: pack their stuff immediately. Now that the kids are part of the Countess's mansion, they absolutely have to study and help out around the house for an hour every weekend. It's necessary to work off that debt, but the main character wasn't forcing them to do it. The choice is always up to the kids. As soon as the Countess got home, the butler asked her, bewildered, who all these kids were. The main character announced she'd be taking these kids under her wing from now on. From here on out, the kids will be living in the side building, so Serafina asked the butler to take good care of them. The guy immediately went over to the kids and led them away. The main character warned Via that the terms of their agreement were about to change big time. I mean, now the Countess isn't just giving her a place to stay. She's also taking responsibility for her younger siblings. Via totally got how kind the Countess was being, so she knew she had to repay her for her generosity. And she could do that with her paintings. The main character asked the artist not to forget that she finds comfort in her work. Plus, Serafina already laid out a few things she'd need help with around the estate. And then the Countess mentioned that her mom recently started tutoring, so she'd be able to teach the kids. Kids just bring a ton of energy and happiness to anyone around them, you know? The main character walked up to the artist and gently touched her hand. She told Via not to give any help to her parents while she's under her protection and living here. Seraphi wanted the young artist to get her loud and clear. Via nodded, promising the lady she'd do everything exactly as she wished. Soon, Via's parents showed up at the main character's mansion, demanding the Countess give them back their kids. But Seraphi just coldly told them to scram if all they cared about was the children. Then she pointed out the bloody trail to the adults, explaining it was left by some folks who'd recently broken into the mansion. So, if the man and woman want to come inside, Seraphi isn't stopping them, but she won't be responsible for the consequences of their choice. The main character took their kids because they were stuck with parents who were, let's just say, not fit to be around. And then, the adults had the nerve to show up at the Countess's place, totally shameless about stealing money the kids had earned. But they figured the kids owed them big time, since they raised them and gave them life. Seraphi just shot back, saying they'd already paid them back by keeping them alive this long. It's not just parents who ditch their kids. Kids can ditch their parents too. They say parents are a kid's whole world from day one, but these kids turned their backs on their own folks and came to Seraphi. So now, the old man and woman need to seriously regret their actions. But they could also claim kidnapping. Seraphi doesn't care. She'll just countersue for embezzling the money. A little later, the headmaid told the Countess that flowers had bloomed near the side building. The kids from the side building asked her to give them to the Countess. Looking at the pretty bouquet, Seraphi called the kids little rascals, who already know how to grease palms. The headmaid said the kids aren't picky eaters, they keep things clean, and they're living healthy lives. Then, out of the blue, she adds that those kids remind her of you when you were little. The main character just stares, stunned at the maid's warm smile. And then she decides she has to go see her mother. Soon, she's knocking on her mom's door, asking with a smile if she's awake yet. Seraphi figured her mom hadn't even gone to bed. She was so deep into her studies. Putting her book down, Madam thanked her daughter, saying she'd found great comfort because of her. That was the second time today the main character had heard something that totally floored her. The headmaid walked in, bowed her head, and told the Countess a letter had just arrived for her. The main character had to go, but she promised her mother she'd definitely come visit again soon. Before leaving the room, Seraphi glanced back and realized her mom was actually doing better, but she still hasn't left her room. Soon, the girl arrived at Duke Felicius's estate. Coming here without business, just like this, felt kinda new. Fionia greeted her, thanking the Countess for coming. The main character couldn't take her eyes off this beauty. Phaonia Felicius looked absolutely stunning in an outfit that perfectly highlighted her refinement and femininity. If I ever get reincarnated, I'd rather be Lady Felicius's personal maid. Phaonia asked if the Countess had been to this garden before, and the main character shyly replied that it was her first time. This made Lady Felicius indignant. She said that Orcus doesn't give a damn about anyone else, which is why he doesn't know how to take care of anyone. Seraphi smiled, knowing perfectly well that Phaonia's brother had bought those gloves. He jumped into action the second he saw the Countess cut her finger on that paper. With a cryptic smile, Phaonia pointed out in front of all the ladies that her brother sure seemed to care about the Countess. At the trial, he tied that scarf around her neck, which seemed a little weird at the time, and Phaonia wondered if he might be falling for Seraph. Giving away a scarf he treasured so easily, it made you think. Anyway, Seraph wanted to thank her. That Countess Validus got along so well with her little brother. That guy's super picky about who he hangs with. There are even rumors he hates people. Just then, a happy loony ran up to Seraph and greeted her. Felicia was actually surprised. She didn't realize the girls had become so close. Loony explained that she and the Countess were doing art together, and that's how they met some cool people at the gallery. With a hint of jealousy, Phaonia asked why she wasn't invited, but Loony quickly changed the subject and suggested they get started. Lady Felicia didn't push for an answer and stood up right away. Then, she announced loudly to all the ladies gathered that she was so happy to see them all. She sincerely thanked each and every one of them again for being there. As many of you may have noticed, the main guest of honor at today's tea party is Countess Validus, Phaonia announced with a smile. Seraphina was taken aback. Suddenly, she was the center of everyone's attention. The young woman thought this was a sign of kindness, but it turned out to be anything but. Felicia raised her champagne glass and suggested they start their long-awaited tea party right away. At that very moment, Orcus was also near the garden, walking a small dog. The little thing was way too brave and even managed to wander this far. When the family first saw the puppy, they didn't like him right away, because keeping a hunting breed puppy in the house is just weird. But the little mutt was so good at barking at all sorts of critters that Dad ended up falling for her. That's why the Duke started treating her well. Then one day, the old man realized the pup reminded him of someone and told his son. Orcus never thought his dad would notice it too. Suddenly, the dog bolted, yanking the leash right out of Orcus's hand and tearing off into the beautiful garden. The ladies immediately flocked to the Countess, each trying to get a word in, hoping to win her favor. There were so many of them. Seraphina couldn't process all the information. Suddenly, amidst the buzz of the ladies' voices, she caught a phrase, "A truly enchanting story," and that grabbed Seraphina's attention. The main character turned her attention to a girl standing a little ways off. It turned out to be Lady Castaigne, the Marquise's daughter. Her father has the Emperor's ear and is a powerful figure among the aristocracy. The Marquise is also known for being straight up, and he heads the Council of Elders. Out of nowhere, Phaonia, who was standing nearby, chimed in that even she found the Countess's story captivating. The Countess must have been something special if even Lady Felicia is saying that. A lot of people already thought Phaonia was a black magic genius for this era, and she was clearly eating it up. Her skills were seriously insane. Lady Felicia could control 5 magical elements all by herself. White magic's out though, since it's a healing power. It doesn't pack any offensive punch, and it doesn't mix with other kinds of magic. Plus, it's the only power that can suppress black magic, so naturally Phaonia, who's got black magic, can't learn it. Seraphi remembered that, according to the novel, Lily should be in the capital right now. The god's treasure originally belonged to Lily, so Seraphi decided that if she gets the chance, she's got to help the girl out. Suddenly, one of the ladies announced that a white mage is staying at the Imperial Palace. So, Lily and the Crown Prince met, and according to the original story, this is where they start catching feelings for each other. Phaonia said she knew all about it, because she personally checked it out. The main character was stunned. Did the Crown Prince really ask his fiancée to keep an eye on his mistress? But at the very least, she needs to break off the engagement and apologize. When you think about it, Seraph has changed the original story quite a bit. Her bold actions have clearly rewritten history, which means we need to tread carefully from now on. Maybe I can make it so Phaonia dumps her fiancé, the Crown Prince of the Empire, first. It was no secret that the White Mage possessed a very valuable talent. Yet, many wondered why nothing had been heard about this girl until now. One of the ladies said with a sneer that the white mage is currently a guest of His Highness, the Crown Prince. Out of the blue, Looney asked the Countess to elaborate a bit on the trial, but Serafina decided to share what she'd learned from the whole ordeal, so others wouldn't make the same mistakes. It was about believing that anyone can change. The drinking, the yelling, the unpleasantness. Dad was wrecking everything with his behavior. He didn't just mess with the family's money, he was tearing everyone down. The only time we got a breather was when Dad ran out of cash and begged Mom for forgiveness. He kept saying he'd never touch another drop. Mom genuinely believed his words, his promises. But as most people could see, the Duke's words were nothing but lies. Once Serafina realized that, she naturally understood what had to be done. One of the ladies commented that putting her father on trial was a bit much, but another lady jumped in, asking if she was just supposed to keep putting up with it. All the ladies gathered there were so kind to the Countess, whom they were meeting for the first time that day. So, Serafi's convinced that the other girls had the same hope for Dad that she did at first. No matter how much you want them to, some people just don't change. Gotta remember one thing, everyone's stronger, more decent, and more valuable than anyone else. We're all too precious to blame ourselves and suffer because of people who act like jerks. Lady Castaigne immediately chimed in, saying the Countess was right on the money. So, she promised she'd be more assertive too. She's gonna be super firm about saying no to everyone, so nobody dares waste her valuable time. The other ladies backed her up and added that they were done with that lowlife. The whole time, Fionia Felicia just stayed quiet, watching the other ladies. Suddenly, a little white puppy popped out from behind the bushes and jumped into Fionia's arms, recognizing her scent. Lady Felicia was totally taken aback when she saw Lala. Fionia couldn't figure out how this little pale thing got here. And just then, Orcus showed up, thankfully stopping the ladies. The guy immediately apologized to the noble ladies, but his sister was already fuming. She didn't get it. Was her brother deliberately trying to ruin her tea party? Orcus just asked her, wasn't it already ruined? Turning his head, he noticed the Countess and asked her to spare him a moment. In the end, that tea party actually helped Sarah. She got a ton of invites from other ladies after that. Orcus was glad it made such a splash. Still, he was bugged by what was up with his sister today. The main character looked at her business partner, puzzled, not really understanding what he was talking about. The guy was saying Fionia looked extra rough around the edges today. Her face was all sad and spaced out, like something had been eating her up inside. Seraphi smirked. Orcus sounded like a real overprotective big brother. But the main character had a question of her own. How much longer are we going to keep up this act of hating each other in front of everyone? Seraphi asked. They'd been playing it safe so far, trying not to give the gossips any ammo. Orcus, heir to a noble house, and Seraphi, the talk of the town, and soon to be the most famous person in the whole empire. It was a miracle no one had caught on to them yet. Orcus explained that they'd been followed by some people, probably sent by the Crown Prince himself. Considering how his goons have been acting, that tracks, the main character realized. Gotta remember the personality of the dame who knew stuff nobody else did, except the Crown Prince's inner circle. She wasn't even trying to hide how much she wanted to humiliate Fionia. Taking a sip of her fancy tea, the main character said it looked like she hated the Crown Prince more than she thought. The Duke's son chuckled, and Seraphi remarked that he was being awfully generous with his genuine smiles today. It's all because the Countess's words are so refined, the guy replied. Still, Seraphi asked again, how much longer did they have to keep up the act of having a bad relationship in front of everyone else? Now that they know the Crown Prince is watching them, they need to act even more chummy and trusting. Orcus figured that would be the safest thing for the Countess. Back then, the Crown Prince wasn't at that forced inheritance trial that happened not too long ago. Because of that, he found out way late about the land abandoned by the gods, showing up for the first time in centuries. But Seraphi didn't get it. Wasn't the Crown Prince first in line for the throne? Sir Felicia replied that wasn't the point. The Crown Prince was your typical power-hungry control freak. When the main character read about him in the book, she thought he was so cool and charming. But in reality, right now, he just seems creepy and terrifying. Even if he is the Crown Prince, he can't just mess with his fiancé's family and close friends all willy-nilly. Suddenly, Orcus had a thought. Why does the Empire's third prince act like such a layabout? Right then and there, the main character pieced it all together. The thought was so shocking, she accidentally spilled her cup of hot stuff. Knowing the Crown Prince's dangerous temper, everything now clicked into place. The reason why, in the original story, the Felicia family and the third prince were plotting a rebellion. It all became clear. Turns out it was way simpler. The crown prince offed the guy who was in his way. The third prince, knowing all this, smartly decided to play the slacker, keep the heat off him. So what the heck happened to the second prince? She wondered. He never even showed up in the original story. Noticing the worried look on the young woman's face, Orcus asked anxiously if she was okay. He told the countess not to sweat it too much, because the crown prince wouldn't be able to touch her. Seraphina, the empress's favorite, the crown prince is probably going to try and get her on his side. The hero decided on a change of scenery, and Seraphina suddenly announced she wanted to get Orcus a killer gift. Actually, she wanted to use the money from the god's treasure, but that'd be way too late. If you really think about it, the advance is basically her money anyway. In that case, Orcus decided he'd pick something seriously expensive. Seraph, with a smug grin, said that as the empress's favorite, she could get away with anything. The guy answered that her financial power was kinda hot, so he'd just have to accept whatever the countess bought. Just then, the door to the little jewelry shop swung open, and the crown prince showed up with Lily. Trips was all about buying the lady whatever her heart desired. Seraph cursed under her breath, because she was sure today was going to be her day. But out of nowhere, the crown prince shows up. Orcus immediately bowed and greeted His Highness, the crown prince of the empire. Trips replied, saying it was a surprise to run into someone he knew in a place like this. Then he put his hand on Lily's shoulder and proudly announced that she was his dear guest, who recently arrived at the imperial palace. Lily instantly felt awkward, because she knew he was Lady Fionia's younger brother. She immediately bowed, gushing about how she'd admired Lady Felicia for ages. Orcus just replied flatly that it was a great honor for him to meet her. The girl kept going, saying that even back in the Albiolos territories, she'd heard tales of her exploits and accomplishments. The prince glared at the short-haired girl, who hadn't shown him proper respect, and demanded to know who she was. A smirk crept across the main character's face. Then, all of a sudden, she was seized by a violent coughing fit. She greeted the crown prince and explained that she wasn't feeling well, which was why she'd been so impolite. Trips instantly realized that this was the winner of the forced inheritance trial and the owner of the god-forsaken lands. Lily immediately rushed to the countess's side to help her. The crown prince realized she was pretty close to Orcus, which made him wonder. Turns out the rumors were wrong, because these two were way more than just business partners. Trips was hoping this dame was worth keeping close, but this is a whole other level of unexpected. Out of nowhere, Orcus asked the crown prince to pick out some earrings that would suit his beautiful sister. Then, he explained that Countess Validus wanted to show her gratitude for help developing the gem mine. Her brother and the countess don't know Fionia's taste, so the guy asked the crown prince to make the choice. Without missing a beat, Trips casually pointed to a gemstone, big and flashy. He figured this rock would go great with Fionia's powerful vibe. And then he told Lily to get lost and check out some other shops, since the selection here totally sucks. The door slammed shut, and Seraphina smirked at her companion. They decided to pick out some rings to throw the crown prince off the scent, acting like they're a thing. So arm in arm they left the store, purchase complete. Our main character never would have guessed she'd see those two there. She even started to doubt herself. But Orcus confirmed that if she was thinking about that scene with the crown prince being unfaithful, she saw it right. But it doesn't seem like the white mage returns the feelings. She looked more like she was being held against her will. The main character mentally agreed. And that's the exact mistake that makes the original story so messed up. Because, let's be real, Lily doesn't love the crown prince. Seraphina admitted to her business partner that she felt the same way, so she nudged things along a little. When the blonde ran up to her, she asked if the girl really wanted to study magic under Lady Felicia. If that desire was genuine, the countess offered the lady a chance to do things her way, meaning Seraphina helped the white mage get into the magic tower. Felicia popped open the gift from the crown prince and immediately said she hated the color. A few days later, Seraphi got a letter from Looney, inviting her to the grand opening of her store. The lady wrote that she'd be thrilled if the countess could make it, and they could have a great time together. As soon as our girl showed up at the place, she ran right into Count Mars. She was taken aback and frowned, not even noticing Looney. But the girl was standing right behind her dad, who exclaimed how he couldn't miss an event like this. Looney giggled softly, and now our main character understood what was going on. Seraphi owed the lady a lot, so she told the Count he had an amazing and talented daughter. The man replied that thanks to his youngest's incredible luck, he was honored to have such a significant meeting with the Countess. That kid's been stubbornly saying she wanted her own store since she was little, and just thinking about it gives the Count a headache. Luckily, Looney's all grown up and marrying a well-to-do guy, so Dad's over the moon. The Count just asked his daughter to please stop having accidents around his business, but Looney immediately swore it wasn't her. Serafi gave a sweet smile and told the Count he was a wonderful father, while thinking to herself, "Why are all the dads around here like this?" Before leaving, Looney's dad gave a little wave goodbye. His daughter immediately started apologizing to the Countess for having to witness that awkward display. Vaya used to say the same thing, so our girl shot back, "We both know who's more embarrassing here." Looney perked up and invited the lady inside. Turns out, this girl's in the business of selling stuff aimed at single, high-society women. Her main thing is tastefully picked-out home decor. You could say the whole shop's a showroom, but Looney sells a bunch of other stuff too, and she personally checks every item, from when she buys it to when it hits the warehouse. Treating something this serious like a game was messed up, so Seraph bluntly said that Looney's dad had terrible taste. The lady immediately grabbed Seraph's hand and happily replied that the Countess was the first to tell her that, except for Carl and Fionia, who were the first to say it way before. Looney explained that she had 2 older brothers who were fighting over the inheritance, and she wasn't involved in any of it. But she's got a knack for business, probably because she watched her family trade stuff since she was a kid, and she knows she's got the talent for it. They originally promised Looney this shopping center, but then they suddenly changed their minds and decided to sell it off and add the money to her dowry. Honestly, the girl even suspects that her brother's house fire was their doing too. The main character was stunned, realizing that the lady suspected her own family. Because of the fire a few months back, the entire outer wall of the building was damaged. Repairs started, and Looney couldn't show it to the Countess. When she told her relatives about the fire, they just told her to take advantage of the situation and start getting ready for marriage. Ever since then, Looney started suspecting that someone in the family must have done it to snatch them all from her. Suddenly, everyone looked guilty, and she figured she'd have a tough time investigating this alone. The Countess had handled way bigger messes before, so Looney was sure she could help. That's why Looney asked our girl to team up and catch the arsonist. The perp's gotta come back to the scene of the crime, right? As evening rolled around, Fionia, arms crossed, asked, all skeptical, if the arsonist would really show up tonight. Looney was dead certain, and was even willing to change her name if nobody showed. She hoped Serafina felt the same way, but Fionia said the Countess was clearly having second thoughts. Which was true, our main character was really just itching to go home right now. Still, she agreed with Looney. There was a chance, statistically speaking. The main character was taken aback when Fionia suddenly fed her dear friend a strawberry. Whoever torched the place probably planned it for when nobody was home at the mansion. Just as Seraph was about to say something about Lady Felicia, Fionia insisted she just call her by her first name. The main character took that into account and added, the arsonist could pin the blame on Looney, saying she wasn't watching the shopping center closely enough. Seraph's definitely right, so the Count's daughter started wondering what they should do. Seraph calmly announced that the trap was already set. The criminal's goal is to stop the shopping center from reopening, but since they failed, they'll definitely be back. Then we'll have to catch them red-handed at the scene. Soon, the young women noticed 2 men approaching the shopping center. One of them pulled out a match and lit it. Luna yanked open the window and started yelling. Without missing a beat, Fionia reached out and conjured up a blast of water to put out the fire before it spread. Realizing they'd been spotted, the creeps took off. Luna cursed under her breath, and Fionia asked if she'd managed to get a look at their faces. The noblewoman nodded and said they were servants from the Marcy household. Serafi suggested pushing for a formal investigation, but Luna knew damn well her father was too powerful. But the goons still walked right into a trap. Luna had bought a scented tree earlier. Touching it causes certain unpleasant reactions. She figured they'd be back to try another arson, so she left a little something on this side of the shop. Even so, Luna felt like total crap. Guess she just needs some time to process this. But out of nowhere, Looney declared with total conviction that she would get revenge on everyone who dared to take what was precious from her. Her attitude was rock solid. Serafi was even surprised how quickly she was bouncing back. All right, time to head home. But before leaving, Fionia told the Countess she needed to have a word with her. Orsis mentioned that Serafi had recommended a white mage as her apprentice. The main character knew this topic would come up soon enough. They say one crazy situation is always followed by something even crazier. Fionia was stunned, totally speechless, when the Countess suddenly confessed she'd decided to start seeing her brother. Later, at Count Mars's mansion, Looney burst into tears, exclaiming she'd never be able to face her friends again. Her parents were in shock. Their daughter had said she was staying overnight at her friend's place. Still not calming down, the girl demanded to know if her mom and dad even knew what the heck had just happened. Her parents were floored the second their daughter revealed she'd been hanging out with Fionia and Serafi at the Felicia family mansion all this time. And then she remembered she'd left her notebook at the store. That thing's her lifeline. It's got all the info she needs to run the place. So, they both headed up to the attic to find that notebook. The main character stepped forward, wanting to tell the story herself, and said they almost got burned alive up there. Some lowlifes showed up and tried to torch the store. Luckily, Lady Felicia was there, so they managed to escape. But the Countess wasn't about to let this slide. Serafina ordered all the mansion's staff to assemble, because some nasty stuff was used to start the fire. Touch that stuff with your bare hands, and you'll get blisters and an unbearable itch. So, those symptoms should be showing up on the bad guys' bodies. Fionia was quick to sniff out the right person. Poor Looney, she almost died at the hands of her own brother. After all, he's the one who started showing those symptoms. The girl couldn't even imagine that her own brother was trying to offer. The eldest brother's lips curled into a smirk. He looked at his other brother and said that if that's how it is, then he might be the second person responsible for the fire. That harsh statement really pissed the guy off. Count Mars immediately apologized to Lady Felicia and Countess Validus for raising his son so poorly. But the main character said that she thought it was way too weird from the start. Why isn't anyone asking Looney if she's okay? She's still their daughter and sister, you know? A family member almost burned alive. And instead of being worried, the family's just blaming her. The Count immediately apologized to his daughter, reaching for her hand, and said he was scared out of his mind. Looney shoved her dad away from her, just like that. It was the same thing last time. That girl's shop almost burned down, and not a single person in the family even bothered to comfort her. Dad, Mom, the brothers, they all just didn't give a damn. "You're all the same!" Looney shouted, collapsing onto her knees, bursting into tears. Watching all this, the main character wondered if Looney was trying to cut all ties with her family for good. Fionia whispered to the Countess not to worry, because Looney was actually happy right now, looking forward to taking everything from them. She's feeling more joy than sorrow at this point. In that case, Serafi told the Earl that they would need to revisit the contract for distributing the treasures of the gods through his guild. The contract clearly states that in the event of an incident, the injured party can demand termination of the contract. And it also stipulates that compensation for damages will be discussed separately. After what the Earl's son did, almost killing Serafi, there's no way we can pretend things are still cool between us. Earl Mars told the Countess to stop, saying this was going way too far. His eyes widened when the Countess started talking to him in that sweet little voice. Serafi pointed out she hadn't even started talking about compensation yet. Earl Mars looks pretty shocked right now, but our girl wants him to understand where she's coming from. I mean, her best friend almost bit the dust because of her own brother. The Earl suggested they all calm down and talk things over slowly. Just then, Looney burst into the hallway with a suitcase, yelling she couldn't live here anymore. And her own mother was actually scolding her in this situation. The woman tried to explain that she was saying all this because her daughter carelessly made a scene in the middle of the night. Luna couldn't wrap her head around how her family, knowing how much she loved that store, could do this to her. She knew deep down her old man was behind it all. This lady promised her family they'd regret this move. From now on, her family better start praying for forgiveness, because they're gonna be begging her for mercy. Luna later declared this wasn't just running away from home, it was a complete severing of family ties. The main character tried to smile and said, "If Luna says so, then that's how it is." The girl was surprised the Countess was handling all this alone, but Serafina said she was just about to hire an accountant. Fionia came over to the girls and asked Luna what her plans were now. Turns out, first she was going to take full control of her shop. Meanwhile, the main character was wondering when her place became a safe house. Looney was stoked, saying she'd cut ties with her family after this and start her own clan and trade guild. Serafi just caught flack in the crossfire of someone else's family feud. But Looney was dead set on this. She was going to wipe the Marcy family off the map. Of course, the young lady felt a weight lifted off her shoulders now. But our girl was worried, wondering if things would really be okay, since her engagement to Sir Iris was tied to her family. That part really bugged her, but Looney was sure their love and engagement would hold strong. If it fell apart over something this small, then Carl wasn't worth anything anyway. First, she decided to prove she was worth something, even without the Marcy family's backing, and that plan included Serafi. But our main character didn't want to get dragged into other people's family drama. Still, Serafi decided to ask what brought both of them to her mansion. "Damn it," Looney muttered, kicking herself for being so scatterbrained, and showed the Countess the feathers she'd found. One of these things was stuck to Serafi's back at the tea party, and another one was on the Countess's legs the night of that crazy party at Count Marcy's. The main character shot up and ran to her desk. She was totally losing it, wondering why these blasted feathers kept popping up everywhere, and knew she had to do something about it. Later, Orcus arrived at the estate, and Serafi told him about the weird feather situation. The first time the main character noticed a feather was in the art gallery. Back then, she figured it wasn't worth mentioning to her business partner. But then it happened again at Fionia's place during the tea party, and then at Looney's house. Fionia tried to figure things out with a magic scan, but it didn't pick up anything. No dark magic or spells on the feathers, just that they're top-notch quality. Since the Countess is so upset, Fionia suggested torching one of them. The third prince, who arrived at the estate with Orcus and is currently holding Lala, immediately asked if it had burned. The Duke's son asked, puzzled, what kind of creature it was. They were talking about Lala, who was, for some reason, completely covered in dirt. The third prince apologized to the Countess and explained that the little rascal had dug up the garden, but the guardian will be held responsible. Fionia promised to fix everything with magic right away, but Serafi replied that it was fine. This situation is actually perfect for them. The main character placed the quill next to the dugout hole and asked little Lala to give it a good bite. And then Serafi asked the third prince what brought him here. Taking a step closer, Esther replied that he was just bored. But our girl knew that was total BS. His Highness was definitely holding back, and she was right. The prince wanted to know if the Countess was really planning on making an enemy of Count Marcy. Everyone knew the Marcy family was the biggest donor to Eastier's older brother's political campaigns. Looks like that old geezer ran straight to him to tattle, which means our girl is now in deep trouble. This proves that Serafi is now on the Crown Prince's radar. As long as the Empress is healthy, there won't be a huge uproar right away. But right now, the Crown Prince and his supporters are the most powerful people in the Empire. Serafi now understands exactly why the Cadio family keeps sending marriage proposals. Lady Demian, who looks down on the Crown Prince's fiancé. The Marcy family, who tried to burn down the daughter's shop. It's all connected to the Crown Prince in some way. Our girl apologized to His Highness for causing any trouble. Serafi bowed, saying she wasn't planning on making enemies with the Marcy family. She didn't have the guts, and definitely didn't want to. "I sure hope that's the case," Esther replied. Suddenly, Looney saw something and screamed in fright, putting the main character on edge. But she didn't have time to figure out what was going on, because a broad chest suddenly blocked her view. It was Orcus, and you could see the worry in his eyes. He took the Countess's hand and told her to be quiet. The main character's eyes widened at being so close to him, and then she saw feathers appear. Orcus was holding them, while the third prince was totally confused about what they were. Everyone was in shock, because the burn marks on the feathers suddenly vanished, which seemed totally impossible. How could something like that even happen? Orcus and Esther were stunned when Countess Validus suddenly took off, ran to the pit, and started digging with her bare hands. The feathers vanished here too, like some kind of magic trick. The Duke's son knelt beside Countess Validus and asked, all worried, if she was okay. But he froze, totally caught off guard, when she called him sweetie and reminded him they'd agreed to pretend to be dating. Seriously, right now? The guy asked. And Seraph just said they needed to get used to it. Then, the main character reached out a shaky hand towards Orcus's chest, asking if she could lean on him. And then the Countess just straight up passed out. This body's physical stamina is just plain awful. So after all that stress, Seraph just conked out. The next day, Count Mars walked into the office and greeted Countess Validus with a wide, cheesy grin. The main character gave the guest a skeptical look when he said she looked radiant as always. "Looking a little worse for wear, aren't we?" the main character asked, a smirk on her face. She wondered aloud if Count Mars was getting a little tired of worrying about his runaway daughter. The man admitted, looking flustered, that he was. And then Serafina asked why he hadn't contacted her even once. Count Mars was actually feeling shame because of some little girl. But the aristocrat knew there was nothing he could do about it. Countess Validus had sworn loyalty to the Empress. And she's also the girl who's got the big guy upstairs looking out for her. So considering the Crown Prince is up to something and counting on the Count, if this contract gets ripped up, he's totally screwed. The main character handed the Count the trade agreement, with a new clause added in. The man's eyes widened in surprise, because the content was exactly the same. The Count was confused, and voiced that not much had changed since last time. "She's been feeling under the weather lately," Serafi said, guessing that the Count was worried about her condition. The man immediately grabbed the Countess's hand and exclaimed, "When you're sick, it's hard to even take care of yourself." As always, Count Marcy is understanding, so Serafi asked him to be patient with her, even if he's upset about the kids. Of course, the siblings' fights are pretty serious, and the Count felt it was his fault for not keeping a closer eye on things. The main character gently stroked the Count's hand and told him not to talk like that. He's a great father, who the Countess deeply respects. The Count was puzzled. Serafi grew up with such a respectable father, so of course she respects him. The main character smiled and announced that today was the last time they'd mention the incident. She pointed to the asterisk at the bottom of the contract. Under this agreement, the Duchy of Felicia assumes control of the guild. This project was co-developed with the Duke of Felicia as compensation for the hardships Serafi endured. The main character didn't know the Duke's intentions. Maybe he wants to give the guild back to Looney, since she's his daughter's best friend. Serafi was certain this condition would shut the aristocrat up. As a result, Count Mars added his signature. A smile crept onto the main character's face. "Excellent, Count Mars. I hope this all works out," Countess Serafi said, looking at the signatures. Carl Iris smiled broadly, seeing his beloved fiancé. Looney gazed adoringly at her sweetheart and called him her one and only silver spark. The man noticed his fiancé's face was drawn and immediately asked if she'd been skipping meals. All this sickening sweetness was making the main character want to gouge her eyes out. Holding his bride close, Carl thanked Countess Validus and admitted he wished he could have gotten here sooner, but things got held up. So, he was grateful to Seraph for taking care of Looney all this time. The main character told him to skip the thanks, 'cause Looney's her best friend. If Carl had acted like he didn't see Seraph in the library that day, she'd never be here. Out of nowhere, the guy asked the Countess to just call him by his first name. Seraph asked, all sarcastic, if she should call him Baby or Carl. And Carl, feeling Looney's glare, said that's not what he meant. Thanks to the Countess, Carl's got a whole new perspective on being a knight and what it means to serve. He stepped up to the Countess, bowed, and called her his benefactor. The main character grinned and told Carl to just call her by her name too. Luna was stoked. Her boyfriend and her friend were totally hitting it off. Out of nowhere, Carl mentioned that Sir Felicia had asked him to deliver something to Countess Validus. The knight and his fiancée knew damn well that Seraphi and Orcus weren't dating, so the Countess could drop the act around them. Suddenly, Carl remembered that the Countess and his beloved fiancé were planning to go into business together. So naturally, he got curious about what that business was. A moment later, the door burst open and a worried maid rushed into the room. The main character jumped when she realized Marin had come to report something about her mother. She refused! Apparently, the lady suddenly went for a walk, and something happened out there. The little boy was sobbing his heart out, begging Madame to wake up. Today was the first time in ages she'd opened the door herself. But she had a fit, because Madame was terrified of going outside. Mama Serafina came from dirt-poor small-time nobility, stuck living with a husband who didn't give a damn about her. All she ever wanted was a simple, quiet life. But even that dream gets shattered thanks to some kid's screw-up. If Serafina had bolted from this hellhole sooner, her mom wouldn't have had to suffer like this. The main character walked over to the woman lying on the bed and gently touched her hand. She knew for sure that this woman's daughter wanted the same thing just as badly. Serafina figured this estate wasn't helping her recover, so she suggested the woman leave. She's not kicking her out, not at all, just offering a way for her to maybe feel a little better. The woman broke down crying, admitting she'd been hoping things would eventually work out. But the nightmares keep coming back, and she can't catch a break. She knew it for sure now. She could never live a normal, full life in this house again. Because of that, Madame felt terrible and wanted her only daughter to forgive her. But our girl didn't get what her mother was apologizing for, since none of this was her fault. "You have to live," Sarafi said, adding, "You protected me in that awful place. So now Madame can rest. She can let herself be weak until she feels better." Our girl promised to completely change this estate while her mother was away. The woman started worrying about how her kid would handle everything alone, but Sarafi told her not to sweat it, because she's not alone anymore. A little later, our girl told her friends that she was going to start a care business. There are a few care businesses around, but they're totally subpar. Sarafi's already got her eye on the perfect spot. There are tons of abandoned villas around here, including the Marcy, Iris, and Felicia family villas, so we can totally use those. Even though it's far from the capital, these are still aristocratic villas, so they're gonna be worth a fortune. But honestly, the main character doesn't have to sweat it. Ripped from her train of thought, Sarafi was grabbed by the elbow by Looney, who blurted out, like, "No way, her business partner is also her friend." Lady Mars only wanted to handle the trading and money stuff, so Sarafi would clean up any messes, just in case. Watching the girls chat, Carl gave a warm smile. In this short time, Sarafi has become a real lady of the Felicia family and a total business whiz. The guy had zero doubts that hooking up with the Countess of the Validus family was the right call. Looney's attention was snagged by the look on her boyfriend's face. He seemed kinda tense, so the young woman immediately wanted to know if everything was all right. Carl took his bride's hand and said there was nothing weird about it. Changing the subject, Carl asked how she was doing at Countess Validus's place and if she was comfortable there. The girl smiled and confessed she finally felt alive and could breathe easy, even without Carl and Fionia. Happy to hear that, the man replied that his bride had really found a good friend. The main character watched their sweetness again with a hint of disgust. Carl just held his beloved tighter, suggesting she accept him too, since he didn't want to be apart from his sweet peach. Losing it, the main character screamed for them both to get out of her sight. Leaning against the doorframe, Madame Felicia turned to her son. She told him she really was thinking about splitting up, but Orcus took her words with a grain of salt. Then he offered his mother some tea to calm her down. The woman agreed, and as soon as her son put the cup on the table, she said his father hadn't changed a bit. Orcus just replied that everyone already knew that. Annoyed by her son's answer, the woman declared that the Duke had become completely unbearable lately. Seeing the skepticism on her son's face, the Countess couldn't take it anymore and blurted out that he was the spitting image of his father. And then she asked Orcus if he knew that his father was always talking about Countess Validus. Fionia mentions the Countess all the time too. Actually, the Duchess was also impressed by that young woman's appearance at the trial. Now, every time the woman sees Felicia's hair getting in the way of the Knight Order's training, she gets the urge to chop it off. She didn't even realize the Duke would be so uptight about it. Actually, Orcus's father also had long hair when he was young, and he always wore it loose. If it weren't for that portrait warming her soul, the Duchess would have beaten her husband half to death a long time ago. Unlike the Duke, she didn't say she wanted a divorce because he'd altered their situation. The woman figured her husband said it out of worry, not dislike. After all, he knows she's getting some pretty nasty looks. Same old story. Time keeps ticking, and the old ways keep suffocating everyone. Orcus whirled around, hearing the distinct snip of scissors. His mother suddenly and decisively cut off her beautiful long hair, saying she did it as a sign of respect. And then she remembered the rumors that her son and Countess Validus were now romantically involved. Now the Duchess was calm. She honestly thought Orcus would live his whole life alone. Besides, he personally went to her and even put the squeeze on Baron Cadio. If you want to keep sucking up to the Crown Prince, you better cut it out, now. Tell Orcus that the next time you see him. The Crown Prince's lackey spun around the second he heard that voice behind him. Duchess Felicia was actually curious what kind of nerve Baron Cadio had to hit for her son to react like that. The guy said the Baron had been aggressively pushing marriage proposals on the Countess, and Madame immediately saw that as a low blow. Orcus figures the Cadio family's got like 3 years left of gold mining, tops. The Duchess was stoked to hear that, because those guys have been a pain in their butts for centuries, going all the way back to their ancestors. If that gold mine dries up, their first problem's going to be minting gold coins, and that's going to cause a huge stink in the whole empire. Orcus plopped down in a chair and started thinking hard about something. Noticing his mom staring at him, the guy looked at her and asked what she was doing. So, turns out the Duchess was just gushing about how gorgeous her own kid is. Figures. Orcus told her to cut the crap and get to the point already. Dropping the smile, the madam said there were rumors that Countess Validus secretly registered a white mage at the Magic Tower. That'll get Countess Validus a seat on the Council of Elders. But can she handle those sly dogs? All mages in the Empire are supposed to register at the Magic Tower anyway, so Serafi did the right thing. And not just any mage, but a white mage, who's a guest of the Crown Prince. No matter how you slice it, that's a bad omen. Madame Felicia wanted to know what Her Majesty the Empress had to say about all this. Apparently, she's planning to use the Countess to keep the Crown Prince in check. So, it'd be better right now to get under the protection of His Majesty the Emperor. The rest depends on the Countess's abilities, Madame Felicia said, turning to her son. What do you think? Orcus replied. We'll need to scout out a few good spots for this underground operation. Meanwhile, back at the Imperial Palace, Lily was pacing like a caged animal, totally stressed out. She was so worked up, her palms were actually sweating. The blonde still couldn't believe she was actually going to get into Lady Felicia's lab. Everything was playing out exactly like Countess Validus said it would. If Lily's intentions are pure, the main character advised her to play dumb and act like she can't use magic. At one point, the girl was granted the honor of an audience with the Empress herself. She bowed low, introducing herself as the white mage everyone's been talking about. The Empress listened in silence as Lily Albiolos, daughter of the Viscount, gave her greetings. So, not wanting to waste any time, she decided to test the girl's abilities by slicing open her own arm with a sword. Now, Lily had to step up and show what she could do, prove her magic actually worked. But the girl just collapsed to her knees, begging Her Majesty's forgiveness, saying she was still really bad at controlling her magic. The Empress was confused, asking if the Crown Prince wasn't helping her study magic. Since Lily was useless, Her Majesty just told them to take the girl away. Soon, the lady was taken to the Magic Tower and told that Lady Felicia would be in charge of her training from now on. The blonde still couldn't believe she'd actually made it here. Just then, Fionia came into the room and apologized for making the lady wait. Turning around, Lily looked at the girl with tear-filled eyes, still not believing this was really happening. And then, catching Fionia completely off guard, she threw herself into her arms. When they met, Lady Felicia was sure it wouldn't exactly be love at first sight. Fionia wiped away the girl's tears and asked if she was all right. Lily immediately apologized to the noble lady for showing such an unflattering side of herself. The dark sorceress smiled and said everything was fine. Lady Albulos confessed she'd read a ton of Lady Fionia's research papers and writings, so now she wanted her autograph. For example, she read this book on the way to the capital. Fionia smiled and decided to tell her fan that she'd just started a new project. Suddenly, Lily also asked the miss to sign her hand too. Fionia was touched by such childlike innocence. It even crossed her mind that this blonde girl was actually pretty cute. So, some time passed, and our girl was pretty surprised when she heard about the cat. Turns out, this little furball had made itself at home, playing with the kids in their annex, and Seraphi had seen it, but didn't realize it was here to stay. Showing off 2 hats, Looney asked her friend which one looked better. Seraphi liked the orange one more, so Lady Mars decided to go with that. Nothing's free in this world, so our main character promised to deduct the cost of the hat from her friend's paycheck. But Looney didn't mind. Her abilities are worth way more than a simple sum like that anyway. The main character agreed. What she struggled with for so long, her friend did with ease. Looney is super talented and better than her brothers in every way, which means she could totally be the head of the family. Lady Mars agreed with that take, but she wants to focus on business, not running the family. Even though it's a little late, Looney decided to ask Seraphi if she was bothering her. Not really, the main character replied. So her friend immediately asked her to hire her officially. Seraphina found her a place to trade and gave her freedom, while also letting her show off what she could do. That's why the Countess deserves to use a specialist like her, Looney exclaimed. These girls became friends completely by chance, meeting at the atelier, and today, Looney decided to show Seraphina some cool spots. Plus, Lady Mars really wanted to create an incredible story with her friend, to see the world from a different perspective, to look strong, but be soft and kind inside. Looney happily exclaimed that Seraphina was like a whole world to her. Feeling awkward, the main character asked her friend to stop, because she was getting a little carried away. Since Looney really wanted a job, Seraphina asked her what kind of salary she wanted, Hearing that, a smile appeared on the girl's lips. She squealed with delight, showering the Countess with thanks. Before long, the young women arrived at their destination and saw the dilapidated villa they'd been looking for. Looney figured just fixing up the villa and the grounds would take a year, but she thought the repairs here would take about a week. Now we need to get some furniture, stock up on supplies, and pave a road. The main character was taken aback when Looney suddenly produced a scythe for the grass. "You're pretty good with that thing," Serafi said, surprised. Her friend reminded her that her fiancé was a knight and she'd learned it from him. Of course, today's actually the first time she's ever really used it. The door crumbled the second Serafi even touched it, confirming this was definitely an old, abandoned villa. The inside wasn't too bad either, but it's best to call in an expert to check everything out. First, we gotta clean up, though. Plus, all the windows are gone, so we'll have to replace those. Soon, Looney just collapsed, yelling about how totally wiped she was. Still, after all that hard work, the big picture was starting to come together. Lady Mars was only worried about one thing now. She'd probably have to pivot her whole business. Serafi knows it herself. The upper crust are just awful people, completely obsessed with their own egos. The main character suggested using a getaway concept, so people who have a hard time at home could come here. Her friend loved the idea, so she immediately started mapping out a step-by-step plan to make it happen. First, they needed to make the nearby forest trail safe, put in some benches, and let people enjoy the scenery. Plus, there's a lake nearby. They could build a pedal boat, the kind where you sit and pedal to move forward. Looney liked her friend's idea, but the blueprint was super weird and looked like a messed-up duck. The girl spaced out, so the main character grumbled that she'd think about hiring her later. Yeah, that was just a joke. But now Looney's starting to sweat the fact that she's gonna blow the budget. The main girl didn't see a problem and just suggested we bump it up. She was totally chill about it, but Looney saw things differently. People usually say that folks like that have no real skill, they just throw money at it, and that kind of business is never gonna fly. This project's a huge chance to show what Validus can do, so we can't just keep relying on our, special advantages. For some reason, Seraph suddenly pictured Orcus, who said the Countess was doing everything right. Looney suggested expanding the business by selling and renting out boats, since it's a waste to just keep them here. So she suggested we head back and start looking for investors. Touching her friend's shoulder, the main girl smiled and said they should think about the contract again. We need to hire a separate accountant, but Looney can be my assistant. Seraph was offering her friend a chance to be by her side, work on a business she's passionate about, and get support while doing it. Words can't describe how long Looney had been waiting for this moment. Lady Mars kissed the Countess's hand, saying that only she could fully unlock her potential. At first, our girl had to do everything solo. She could only rely on herself. But then, out of nowhere, people started helping her out. Seraph reminded herself, for like the millionth time, that she can't get too attached to people because it's gonna hurt later. Thinking about all this, our main character noticed her friend's worried face, and then everything just went black. As soon as Seraph came to, the first thing she saw was her friend's anxious face. Looney explained that the Countess was probably just super exhausted, which is why she suddenly collapsed. It totally freaked her out. And then the lady went on about another feather that got stuck in the carriage window frame on their way back. Looney saved it in a jar, but since Fionia said it's nothing serious, there's nothing to worry about. Just then, someone knocked on the door, asking the Countess for permission to enter. Seeing Orcus, Seraph immediately called him by a cute nickname, but the man asked her to only do that when other people were around. But the main character explained that if they kept doing that, they'd look like a more affectionate couple. Anyway, Orcus apologized to the Countess for his sudden visit. "No worries, darling," the main character replied. The man hesitated for a moment, then explained that he didn't just come to visit, but to deliver something. Like Seraph said, his family bought out Lady Looney's commercial row today. The receipt should be inside the document. The main character promised to deduct it from Looney's salary, so the lady started begging pathetically to make a gift to the first employee. Seraph only promised to do that on the centennial of work. Also, the heroine received an invitation to the Council of Elders, where influential aristocrats of the Empire gather to discuss matters. That's where all the big conflicts from the original story happen, so obviously our girl can't go there. Except Serafi got a recommendation from the Empress, which means she's automatically joined the council for life. Orcus said his dad will be reaching out to the Countess soon. because he wants them to attend the first meeting together. Well, overall, if the Duke's around, there shouldn't be any major issues, the main character thought. She wondered out loud if the Crown Prince might be there too. Orcus confirmed her guess, because the Crown Prince is actually a member of the Council of Elders. Serafi just figured that at this rate, the uprising that's supposed to happen in the story won't be far off. As soon as the main character was alone, she collapsed onto the bed, totally drained. With the Empress's recommendation forcing her to join, there was nothing she could do, so she filled out the paperwork and paid the fee. Turns out the meeting's in 2 weeks. What's done is done, gotta roll with it. The main character's made her call on something she can handle. Before long, Serafina bought back the commercial building the Felicia family snatched up to screw over Count Mars. Then she signed Luna up with an official contract, making her secretary and putting her in charge of running the building. Time flew by, and before they knew it, the villa at the resort was all fixed up. The day came for the Dowager Countess Validus to head out. Serafina, worried, reminded her mom she didn't have to push herself, but the madame was determined to do it on her own 2 feet. All the main character could do was watch her mom, who was shaking like a leaf. Unable to take it anymore, Serafina dropped to one knee and asked the madame to lean on her back. Her mom didn't put up any more of a fight and agreed. But the second the main character stood up, she lost her balance and started to fall. They both ended up crashing to the floor, and Sarah immediately reassured everyone around that she was okay. But hey, at least now they could finally get out of that room. The madame's eyes were wide with shock. She couldn't believe she actually did it. Now it actually looks like people live here, the main character said with a smile, trying to cheer her mom up. Tears of joy welled up in Madame Validus's eyes. The main character gave her a warm smile back, and then she hugged her, whispering in her ear that everything was all right now, and her mom didn't have to be afraid of her nightmares anymore. The heroines managed to stumble out of the room, but things weren't that simple, because getting out of the house was a whole other, much bigger problem. The main character started to worry that she was pushing her mom too hard, and now she was really stressed. But the madam grabbed her only daughter's hand and told her not to worry, that she was all right. Instead, she just asked Seraph to hold her hand tighter. When, instead of drowning in a deep nightmare, a person decides to bravely move forward, despite all the hardships, only then does that moment arrive, when he truly starts to live. Spreading her arms wide, Madame Validus realized she truly felt like she was breathing freely now. The woman turned her head as soon as she heard a child's voice. A little girl ran up to her, and, grabbing the hem of her dress with tears in her eyes, asked when the teacher would return. The madam couldn't give a definite answer, so she asked the little one to write her a letter with the words she had learned. Stroking the girl's head, Seraph's mother promised to answer her for sure. Perfect weather for a road trip today. House Felicius values its friendship with House Validus, so the Knight Order decided to escort the lady to her destination. Madam said they shouldn't have gone to such lengths, but Orcus replied he couldn't let his darling's mother travel alone like that. The guy wanted to add it was all for his girl, but his personality just wouldn't let him spit it out. But that was enough to surprise Lady Validus, so Seraph grabbed Orcus's arm, saying they were really dating. In Carl's warm embrace, Looney quietly whispered that she'd never seen a couple with less emotion. Before her mother got into the carriage, the main character called out to her. She handed her some divine treasures, asking her to bury them all in a circle along the base of the manor walls upon arrival for protection. And then she gave her mother her necklace, putting it around her neck and asking her to always wear it. This gift really made Lady Validus happy. She hugged her daughter tight, who reminded her that the second mom gets there, she'll be swamped with work, walks, tending the garden, planning out tomorrow's schedule, and reading the letters she'll be getting before bed. When Seraphi and the kids come to visit, she's got to be in tip-top shape to greet them. Madame Validus promised to wait for her guests, and made the boy promise he'd come with all his siblings. The main character gently touched her mother's face and asked her to take care of herself. The woman mirrored the gesture and promised she absolutely would. Watching the carriage pull away, Orcus said he couldn't let his beloved mother make this trip alone, to which Seraphi just replied that he had zero acting skills. Touching his shoulder, the main character thanked him. She really hoped Orcus wasn't mad at her. The main character froze, her cheeks burning red. The moment Lord Orcus said her name so gently. Smirking, the guy started teasing the Countess. Seraphi was the one who said they needed to practice this stuff, so it had become second nature. Then a smile lit up Orcus's face, and he promised the Countess that everything would be all right with her. "It will be," Serafi replied. Taking his hand, the main character added that things had to work out for them too. Orcus agreed, and together, our heroes headed back to the estate. The next day, at Marquise Castaigne's estate, Lady Baptista Castan sincerely thanked the Countess for accepting her sudden invitation. Serafi thanked her back and asked where everyone else was. Turns out tea time isn't for another hour, but Lady Baptista wanted to meet with the Countess first, said they had some things to talk over. The main character remembered the miss mentioning someone was watching her, so she figured that's what this was about. Theory confirmed, it started a few months back. Some dude keeps sending Lady Baptista bouquets and letters, begging her to meet up. But Baptista ain't ready to settle down, and getting gifts from some total stranger is kinda creepy. Her parents were super freaked out by the whole thing, so they made her toss everything she'd gotten. Then one day, while walking in the square, someone just popped up in front of Baptista. The young lady froze and stared, totally stunned, at the bouquet of flowers being held out to her. She looked up and realized the guy standing there was the one who'd been after her. He introduced himself as the heir to the Baglos County. The main character knew right away that Count Baglos was a close aide to the Crown Prince. First Cadio, now Baglos, two of the Crown Prince's entourage making hopeless passes at women. The question was, what kind of family was Baglos? Baptista explained that their house was famous for tea trade. Even the Marcy Trading Guild couldn't compete with them in that area. The amount they rake in monthly from tea sales is way more than a noble family makes in a year. It was infuriating to Looney that this creep was following the young woman everywhere. The family's wealth is a sign of its power, so of course it's hard for Baptista to talk to her family about it. But the main character still hoped the lady would at least try. The young aristocrat just nodded in response. So, at the tea party, after the Countess's words, she finally decided to reject him completely. Baptista even gathered up all the flowers and gifts she got from him and burned them, and then sprinkled salt on top just in case. But obviously, that didn't solve the problem at all. After that day, she started getting even more letters, calling her names and even threatening her. This can't go unanswered, so Serafi told Lady Castaigne to report this to her family and everyone else right away. Baptista confessed that this guy threatened her, saying if she told her family, things would go badly for her. So she was terrified, not knowing what might happen to them next. Putting her hand on the lady's shoulder, Serafi praised her courage, calling her a really brave person. Now that things have escalated this far, we have to do everything we can to make sure he doesn't try anything. In the original story, a law was passed to punish stalkers, and it all started with an attempted murder case. The case involved the daughter of the head of the Council of Elders, and the current head of the Council of Elders is Marquise Castaigne. It all adds up. In the original story, the criminal never got caught. But right now, Count Baglos is the prime suspect. If Serafina can get this law passed quickly, then she can stop the culprit. Thing is, in the original story, the Crown Prince passed this law, but his closest guys, Count Baglos and Baron Cadio, were the ones who presented it. And at the very end of the story, the main baddie got away. First, Serafina decided to see how the Council of Elders meeting would end, having a backup plan ready just in case. After they pass the anti-harassment law, they'll pass another law about issuing development permits. That's why Count Marcy got so interested in Looney's trading business. Development of the trade district area was restricted, but the bill allowed for demolition and reconstruction of buildings. Looney's trade guild fell under approval, but Duke Felicia opposed this project. Soon, the day of the Council of Elders meeting arrived. The size of this whole thing was kinda intimidating. The main girl froze when she heard a familiar voice call out her name. Orcus walked up and told her that her father was already waiting inside. Looney started to gush, and the main girl immediately told the guy to put his arm around her. If he really didn't want to, he could at least fake it, because Serafi wasn't exactly thrilled about it either. Orcus pulled the young woman close and kissed her just above her cheek, which totally shocked the main girl. Grinning, the guy told her she really needed to learn how to act with her partner. Serafi's face went bright red. She reminded Orcus that she'd just said he could just pretend, and the hero calmly replied that the Countess herself had added, "If you really don't want to." While our main character was mentally trying to pull herself together, Looney was totally geeking out over what she was seeing. As soon as they got to the hall, Orcus told them that he and Looney would be sitting behind the main seats, and Serafi would figure out where to sit once she got inside. Out of nowhere, she spotted the Crown Prince and thought, Thank goodness I'm already past that whole inheritance mess. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to her again, and Serafi turned her head. Duke Felicia gave the Countess a warm smile and apologized for not being able to keep his promise to come with her. It wasn't a big deal, since Orcus had escorted her, and the Duke immediately exclaimed that her son was a fine young man. Serafi brushed that off and suggested they take their seats before the session started, but the Duke asked her to wait a minute. "It's not time to start settling in yet," Duke Felicia said, and behind him, the aristocrats, seeing the Countess, immediately swarmed her with questions. Serafi smiled and replied that it was a great honor for her to see them all there today. Then they introduced the main character to Viscountess Kia, and Duke Felicia, in turn, introduced Countess Validus. Serafi immediately bowed, expressing her respect and delight at the new acquaintance, but the Viscountess saying she was too young made the main character's eyes widen in surprise. Serafi noticed the Viscountess hadn't shown her any respect, just watched her with a frown. As soon as the aristocrat left, the heroine asked if she'd done something wrong, but the Duke said Serafi was fine. The Viscountess likes people who are, really put together. The main character confessed she was just terrified of messing up in front of her, and then they announced to everyone that the meeting would start soon, asking them all to take their seats. Putting his hand on the girl's shoulder, the Duke told her not to worry, because she wouldn't even have a chance to screw up. The Countess better brace herself for some real trouble ahead. Serafina thought this elders' meeting would be all class and dignity, but boy, was she wrong. There wasn't a shred of dignity, so the girl had no idea what they were thinking, throwing her into this madhouse. While the mob screams and tries to shout each other down, the ones in charge are playing mind games for profit. Given the rising number of reported incidents, we can't just sit on our hands, Duke Felicia announced, to which the Crown Prince replied, "This bill still needs discussion. We can't just call it a punishable offense yet. Besides, we're voting on a new law to rebuild the old plaza, which is a far more pressing issue right now." Unable to contain herself, Serafina exclaimed, "If that reconstruction bill passes, the poor folks in the back alleys will be driven out." Just then, an aristocrat behind our girl started yelling, asking what the heck they were doing. "This is a sacred gathering!" the Marquis boomed, outraged that the Countess had just up and left her seat. Forcing a smile, Serafi gave the aristocrat a polite apology, explaining she just wanted to ask something. Duke Felicia smiled back, saying he'd received a huge favor, all thanks to his future sister-in-law. Just then, the Crown Prince chimed in, saying all these people could just be relocated to the edge of the commoner district. Except the safety there is absolute garbage, sending the poor folks there. That area is going to become a total crime hotspot. The number of deals in the Plaza District has spiked hard in the last few months, and I'd love to think it's just a coincidence. But the redevelopment zone specified in the bill? It was bought up exclusively by a few noble families. The main character couldn't wrap her head around how the author in their right mind made the Crown Prince the hero of the novel. In the original story, Trips was the one who passed the anti-stalker bill, except the real reason was the prince understood how serious the situation was and used it to boost his reputation. Since Countess Validus is also a member of the Council of Elders, Baron Cadio suggested she share her thoughts. That was a straight-up setup. The aristocrat wouldn't let up, kept asking why the Countess was silent, what happened to her sassy attitude. The main character gritted her teeth and said, "Screw it," in her head. Since the Baron was handing her such a golden opportunity, the girl decided to take it. She asked everyone to understand she wasn't against the development law, but it's a double-edged sword. If these gentlemen want to push this bill through, they first need to investigate the land sale information. The Countess's statement pissed off some of the people there. They took it as an insult. But get this, more than half of those supporting the law were buying and selling plots of land in roughly the same period. And what a coincidence! That very area just happens to fall under their bill. If that's true, then these aristocrats colluded during the Council of Elders meeting and committed nothing short of a scam. If the inspection comes back clean, then we can move on to phase 2 of the plan to help the poor. That's when Serafi was interrupted by the prince, who declared she'd crossed a line. No matter how many people praise her and call her a blessed god, she can't act like the emperor. Besides, the prince pointed out that helping the poor is the temple's job, and the nobles donate huge sums for that. Those very people the Countess is worried about are just common criminals and addicts, eating away at our empire. But Serafi disagreed. These people are citizens of this country too, and they can get back on their feet with a little help. Since the Countess feels so strongly about it, the Crown Prince suggested she start helping them herself. Without hesitating, the main character accepted His Highness's offer and took on the responsibility. She told the head of the assembly that it wasn't too late to discuss the development project after the audit was done. But the punishment law requires an immediate decision. Even right now, at this very moment, people are suffering because of those obsessed stalkers. Hearing that, Baron Cadio jumped up, trying to stop the Countess. But the main character exclaimed, "Does someone really have to bite the dust before you guys get it?" She really put her foot down. After the meeting ended, Serafina was practically shaking in her boots. It was tough, but the bill finally passed. Except there's another special session in 4 days, all thanks to the main character. Even though Duke Felicia said everything went well, it didn't mean our heroes could let their guard down. Orcus brought the latest records on property deals in the square area. Count Mars and Baglos acquired the most property. We can't ignore the profits the Baglos family makes from tea sales. Originally, the Baglos and Kia families were in this business. But 4 years ago, the previous Viscount and his kids died in an accident. After that incident, the elder, who had already retired, came back and took over the title. But he never reopened the business. If you lined up all the land they bought, it'd be a huge area, with residential neighborhoods scattered all around it. Looks like they're planning to build a massive shopping complex. Some of the profits from that complex will probably be funneled into the Crown Prince's political schemes. It's not confirmed, but it's highly likely. Soon after, a letter arrived at the Validus estate. The sender wanted to talk business about the swan boats. The crazy thing was, it turned out to be the head of the Elder Council. But instead of talking business when they met, he asked the girls if they knew what happened to his daughter. And if they did, could they help her? Hearing voices outside, Batista threw open the door and stared at the main character, clutching another letter in her hands. Turns out someone started making trouble for Serafi too. The main character knew she had to push forward on this, even if it sounded arrogant. She promised the Castaigne family a safe haven, just in case, if they helped her out. Serafi can't back down now. She started this whole thing, so she's got to see it through to the end. As long as his daughter was safe, the Marquise was willing to do anything. With that settled, the main character asked for all the threatening letters the lady had received. Now, Looney and Serafi are going to make perfect copies of them. The plan was set, and soon Batista was standing in front of the tea house, which was closed for the day. Without wasting any time, that fiancé of hers showed up with a bouquet. The girl immediately yelled that she wasn't interested, telling him to stop stalking and threatening her. Hearing that, the people around them started whispering. Batista thought it would be better to just kick the bucket than marry a guy like that. And then, the young woman bolted, disappearing into the tea house. The dude was absolutely livid at being dissed like that, and went after her, wanting to teach her a lesson for mouthing off in front of everyone. He grabbed a blade that was lying nearby. Then, he followed the lady upstairs, while she was yelling at him to back off and leave her alone. But the guy was relentless, and soon had Batista cornered. He was so enraged, he immediately swung at Lady Castaigne, not realizing her dad was right there. Realizing his mistake, the guy tried to explain himself. But it was no use, because besides the Marquise, the room was full of other nobles. Countess Validus was even there. Duchess Felicia quickly took the young lord down, pinning him to the floor and sitting on him. Countess Validus came up to him and said she was really sorry they had to meet under these circumstances. The third prince, who was also there, approached Lady Castaigne and offered to escort her back to the estate. He mentioned he was a friend of Countess Seraph. The girl smiled and followed the prince. "Now's the perfect time to meet Mr. Baglos's parents," Duchess Felicia said, glaring at him.